At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is May 8th, 2025, and this is a meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission for the City of West Hollywood. Commissioner Kerpes, will you please share with us the land acknowledgement?
Yes. The West Hollywood Rent Stabilization Commission acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Gabrielino Quiche peoples.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Copeland?
Here.
Commissioner Goldman?
Here.
Commissioner Kerpes?
Here.
Commissioner Topshin and Vice Chair Rory are absent tonight. Chair Bass?
Here. We have a quorum. 4 of our 7 members are present. Both Commissioner Topshin and Vice Chair Rory let us know in advance that they would not be with us this evening. Number 4 is approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? And if so, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Copeland?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldman?
Aye.
Commissioner Kerpes?
Aye.
Chair Bass?
Aye. That motion carries. We'll now move on to the minutes from our April 24th, 2025 meeting. I have one change that I would like to make, and that is that it shows on the second page of the minutes that we took a recess after the second appeal, but it was actually between the first and second appeal. So if we could just move that appropriately. Are there any other changes? Then I will move to approve as amended.
Second.
And there is a second. May we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Copeland?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldman?
Aye.
Commissioner Kerpes?
Aye.
Chair Bass?
Aye. That motion carries. We will now move on to item number 6, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for somebody to speak to us on items that are not on our agenda this evening but fall within our purview. Do we have any public comment at this time?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting should you wish to avail yourself of that. We'll move on now to item number 7 on our agenda, which is the manager's report. Mr. Kessinger, may we please have a report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. It's nice to see you all. I'll begin with some of our data related to 3-day notices and summons and complaints for the month of April. In the month of April, we received 61 3-day notices, 3-day non-payment notices. That is down from 65. We received 5 3-day notices related to the curing of a covenant. That is up 1 from 4 in the month of March. And we received 26 summons and complaints, which is significantly higher than the number in March, which was 4. In terms of the look-ahead calendar, this evening we have 3 appeals and a presentation from our long-range planning division. We have 3 appeals scheduled for May 22nd and June 12th. And just to note, there are no appeals scheduled on June 26th, but we do have our presentation and announcement of the annual general adjustment change, the change in relocation fees, and the change in temporary relocation expense schedule based on the Consumer Price Index data for May. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any of my colleagues have questions of the manager at this time? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 7, which is new business. The one item we have here is a presentation from the Long Range Planning Division, and we will accept that presentation now. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michelle Montenegro, and I'm an Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. I'll be giving about a 7-minute presentation on our new launch of a program called the Zoning Improvement Program for Housing, also known as ZIP. This is really meant for an overview. We had some guiding questions towards the end. We can also have an organic type of conversation, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have as well. So I'll go through the presentation. So the City of West Hollywood adopted and certified its housing element in 2023. It's made up of 31 programs as well as 116 objectives under these various programs. The programs vary in terms of topic area, everywhere from development standards to creating new housing types to streamlining of development projects. There's also a lot of interdepartmental work across the city to get the housing element implemented. It varies from policy and program work. So we also have a few different platforms that are live on the city's website that's also available for the public. And these are really meant to progress and show and track our progress through the housing element. So the first is that we have a dashboard where we can track and give context to certain programs and objectives that we're working through. Then we also have a dashboard for the performance metrics for reaching our regional housing needs assessment. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is next. So the city has a state obligation. Every jurisdiction in the state receives what we call a regional housing needs assessment, also known as ARENA. So this number is assigned for a certain planning cycle. The planning cycle that we're currently in right now is from 2021 to 2029. So we are allotted almost 4,000 units to be built by 2029. That represents the purple line. The blue line represents our permitted units. So as of right now in 2024, because each reporting year to the state housing and community development is a year behind, we permitted 484 units. We forecasted out linearly this line, and if we were to go out to 2029, we would experience a downfall of almost 3,000 units from where we're supposed to be. So really there's an urgency behind building units. But of course, there's a little bit of nuance behind that. We have to build units at a certain affordability level that's also assigned by the state. So we have above moderate, also known as market rate, moderate income, and lower income, which includes very low and low income. So affordable housing units in the RENA make up about 62% of our total RENA number, but we've only permitted about 24% of all units as affordable so far. So this comes in our ZIP program. Our objectives are really derived from the language of the housing element that was already adopted. So this is not a new program or it's not developed by staff, but really from the language of the City Council developed and approved. And so it's looking at reducing zoning hurdles in new development. How can we reduce barriers around zoning? It's looking at modernizing our incentive programs that contribute FAR or additional density for projects. It's also looking at creating a transit-oriented development program around the new K line that's going to be coming into the city. So really on the right is our guiding principles around this program. So focus on production, but also diverse housing needs. I won't run through the entire guiding principles list, but we're trying to be as holistic as possible and equitable as possible. So this is our high-level timeline. We launched the program to the City Council in February, but we've been doing baseline analysis on this program since September. And we're currently in the alternatives analysis phase, meaning that we're doing work on understanding financial and physical feasibility for different housing types. And then we'll bring a policy recommendation forward to our planning commission at the end of this year, and then to the City Council in early of next year. And then the implementation phase of next year really constitutes our environmental impact report requirement, as well as creating the actual zone text amendment that codifies the changes that we're making. And of course, we've had engagement phases. So our first large engagement phase happened last month, and we held community workshops online and in person. And we've been continuing community engagement to focus groups such as affordable housing tenants or social service participants to try to get as diverse pool of people as possible. So our outreach strategies, like what I mentioned, we're trying to be as diverse as possible. So we've held a variety of different mediums trying to get people to participate, and we're continuing to do so. And I just wanted to highlight here our Engage WeHo page for you all and the public. This is where we keep an update of the project at all points in time. So this has real-time information of where we are, as well as when the next community event will be held. So that really wraps up my initial overview, and I can pause here or I can go into guiding questions as well, whatever.
Do you have any questions at this time? My colleagues? Okay, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a basic question, but so you've told us, you've this outline of the plan. What does your plan actually do? How is it going to get us to where we need to be to those numbers? Does it incentivize building housing? Is there money involved? It seems like money seems to be the big factor.
Yeah, so really we're looking at where there are bottlenecks in our zoning structure that reduce our zoning potential. So right now we're looking at what are the barriers to housing? Are there certain provisions or standards that are making developers, that are hard for developers to produce housing with? And then we're also increasing the housing capacity of each zoning district. So for example, right now we have everything that ranges from a single family to a commercial zone that permits mixed use. But our associated capacity in terms of density or building scale is fairly low. So the feasibility of redeveloping those lots are too low to actually produce housing. So we're looking at increasing that capacity per zoning district.
And so how does that play on, like, because there's always, and I know it's private property, it's not necessarily, well, some are city-owned, but most are private properties. But like I think of like the Bank of America site that's just sat vacant forever. The French Marketplace, which has just been years and years and years. And I know there are plans that they want to do things with, but it seems like at a point we need housing, and that's the goal of the city. So if they don't move, how do we make them move to get there?
Yeah, I think that speaks to the different objectives and programs of the housing element. This is really looking at increasing housing capacity under a zoning district, but there's programs that we're simultaneously working on at streamlining housing entitlements so they can get there faster. A lot of the times when they buy a property, they have a certain land value, and the entitlement process slows things down and the market conditions may change. That's what's happened with several of the projects that have had like a 10-year timeline, for example. So at that point in time, if we're focusing on streamlining projects, creating more ministerial review, hopefully the projects won't be hindered in the process to get to permitting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Copeland? I thought you had questions.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I don't want to get into the weeds too much for you tonight, but when we looked at the housing element report before, and we talked about the RENA numbers and so forth, one of the things that was on that housing element showed us with a vacancy rate at that time of 8.7%, which was the highest in the surrounding area, and I understand the most recent is 11%. So if we have 2,900, close to that, the housing manager can correct me, vacant units right now, I'm assuming the majority of those would be luxury units, or are they spread throughout the city? Is there any one area that we're having more vacancies in that we need to focus on? And what can we do? We're looking at the chart that you gave us here, and the moderate, there's only 6 units. That's 1% of what our goal is so far. What things are being done to try to incentivize or partner with people who are developers who can build more housing that is attainable and livable for most people, rather than just a lot of luxury housing and then a few lower income thrown in there? Do we have programs? Are we working? Do we have a committee? Are we working on trying to get to improve those numbers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we have 2 strategies I can respond to. So the first is with the zoning improvement program. What happens with a new project is that we have an inclusionary requirement that depending on the project size, there's a certain in-kind of units that need to be built on site. So anything above 10 units have to require a 20% affordable housing in-kind with the project. If it's below 10 units, that there's an in-lieu fee that they could pay. So we're doing a simultaneous study right now that we're updating our inclusionary housing ordinance to produce even more of the housing types that we need to. Right now, as you saw, we have some lower income units that's been produced, and that's the majority of those affordable, but they come from our partnerships with nonprofit affordable housing developers like EAH, for example, or West Hollywood Housing Corporation. So what we're trying to also look at is moderate income affordable, which is extremely hard to develop. So part of that work that we're doing with inclusionary is that we're reevaluating reevaluating the market conditions of today and how much affordable housing we can actually yield based on today's market. And then with the zoning improvement program, I like to say that we're formalizing a public benefit structure. As you know, most of the projects that are going beyond that affordable for inclusionary require a development agreement. Development agreement is extremely long, lengthy, complicated negotiation process, but if we're able to build in a public benefit structure that says you get this certain number of incentives beyond state density bonus for this additional number of affordable housing units, we're able to build in a public benefit by right into the zoning process. So those are two different strategies that we're taking to developing more affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. One other question, if you don't mind, is that when we're talking about streamlining the process to sort of speed up the shovel to dirt, part of the process for the housing to actually get built, but on the other side of that, once we speed that up, are we going to maybe have stricter requirements that are, I know there's, for example, I know of a building close to me, was sold 9 years ago, sat vacant for several years, was an Airbnb for several years, and then it took 3 years to demolish and build 12 units, and then has one inclusionary, and for that, there was an 8-unit rent-stabilized building that was demolished, and people were evicted under the provisions of the Ellis Act. But for the last 6 months, because of the cost, it's almost completely vacant. You know, it's like $3,900 to $5,500 for 1 and 2 bedroom. So, is there anything that we can also do, not just streamlining to get it to that part, but also to hold them accountable so there's not speculating and flipping and, these sorts of delays that they can control as well, so that it's a reciprocal type of a hurry up and let's get this done.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one aspect that we're taking with the zoning improvement program is trying to take as much of an anti-displacement approach as possible. So that looks at the equitable distribution of housing capacity throughout the city. We're analyzing our rent stabilization data, we're analyzing data about low-income households in the city, and we're trying to see trends in saturation of where those households are throughout the city. So our aim is not to displace those residents, but focus housing capacity where there's the most opportunity, and that would be arguably in our lower density or single-family neighborhoods as well. But I think that with that comes a lot of hesitancy with what is the urban design or the character of those buildings. And part of this process is looking at housing capacity, but also part of and integrated into the program is that we're reevaluating how we can standardize and objectify our standards. Because as you know, Housing Accountability Act does not allow us to implement subjective standards, and many standards in our zoning code are, which is why developers don't necessarily have to comply with them because it's not, permitted per law. So we're changing a lot of those standards to more measurable, metric-based standards that are objective and applicable, so that way those housing projects can be compliant with them. In the terms of anti-displacement approaches, we have discretion as a city to replace certain units as affordable if they're rent stabilized and above lower income. We passed an ordinance, I think about a year ago, that we would replace those as rent stabilized. But if we wanted to be more progressive, which I think with this program we're trying to, we would replace those as affordable. So
That was my next question. I think that perhaps, I guess that's a subjective opinion, but could have been a missed opportunity, because to rent stabilize a market rate building in the future for $5,000 a month, when the state already has a cap now of, 10% annually that they can increase, rents if you're already in there. It seems that having those one-for-one replacements for rent stabilized units should have been lower income, or something that was more comparable with what was being demolished or displaced, as you say. So there is a possibility to maybe work on that as well, you're saying.
yeah, so there's the standards for replacing rent stabilized units are very delineated in state law. So for example, if it's rent stabilized and it's occupied by a lower income unit, it must be a lower income in the new project. If it's not even rent stabilized but still occupied by a lower income household, it has to be lower income in the future. Where the discretion lies, if it's rent stabilized and above lower income. And so we had a choice there,
Right.
and we chose the most market-friendly choice to bring back those units as rent stabilized, but we could choose to go the other way, which is something we're analyzing with our performers in this
So
study.
this was maybe a concern about disincentivizing more housing if they were required to keep them lower. That was
That was
okay.
my concern,
That was
yes.
probably the major consideration in that. And we talked about this filtering that hopefully when newer buildings were built, that the surrounding older buildings would, maybe people would move into the new buildings and that would open up, and keep prices low. But what we've seen is in many cases, I know in my building, what's happened is that sometimes owners will say, well, they're getting $3,500. For my old building made in the 50s and, needs some work, I shouldn't rent it for $1,900. I should make it $25 now or $24, and the prices are going up on those as well as a result. Do we anticipate that as these RHNA numbers go up and more units are built, that will stabilize perhaps prices for the rent stabilized older buildings as well?
I would argue probably the variable that plays into that the most is changing our zoning potential.
Okay.
Right now, our zoning structure, especially in infill residential neighborhoods, incentivize building less units and luxury units that are larger rather than smaller and more units, which may be more naturally obtainable, not affordable, but obtainable.
Right.
And so I think that's the strategy we're going for, is adjusting and calibrating those building scales, those densities to produce and disincentivize the luxury units from being produced, because that's the only market that exists right now under zoning conditions.
Okay. Thank you for your trouble. Appreciate it.
course.
That's all for me, Chair, right now.
Thank you. I think we should probably ask for public comment on this just as a formality since it's on our agenda. Do we have anyone who's asked to speak to this item?
No speakers.
Okay, thank you. And I think that you want to take us through the questions. Do you want to do that at this time?
That would be great, yes.
Let's do that.
Okay, so we have a few questions. These are really adapted from our community workshop. So we also visit our disabilities advisory board. We visit our older adults advisory board, and we're here before you today to try to ask the same type of questions. So our questions are really high level, but any feedback that we get is really helpful. So really the first question are, what are some factors that are considered priorities for where people choose to live? And recognizing that some of these factors have trade-offs. For example, with more parking that goes to a building or increased private open space, that may increase the cost of the unit. So that's something that's a trade-off in development. So we're asking you all to respond to what are the priorities that we should consider the most.
Who would like to go first? Okay.
I'll just list a couple that priorities for me are safe walkability. You have it on here, access to transit, but I would say more transit options that are not just options, but options that are comparable to driving an individual vehicle. I mean, it's hard to convince people to take the bus when the bus takes longer than an individual car, and it's also very upsetting when you're on the bus and watching cars pass you by, single occupants in the vehicles. So prioritization of either both signalization and I know we may not be able to put a bus lane all the way through Santa Monica Boulevard, but at certain parts of the areas where the street's wide enough to where the buses can get around past the vehicles, a 3 to 5 second delay for other vehicles. Slowing other vehicles down, I would say less parking is needed in the city. That we need to make the roadways more or share them more with the devices that are out delivering now. People don't like them on the sidewalk. Well, then let's give them some space on the road and to clear up our sidewalks for people walking. those are the things that are important in my neighborhood. And being able to cross, I think I already mentioned walkability and safety, but we have a lot of streets in our city that are not quite there yet. We've attempted to make a lot of improvements in certain areas, and there's certain locations I can identify that was thinking of the day, what a waste of money that we did here, because either nobody uses it or it's just so slow and it just prioritizes cars versus pedestrians. So just making sure that we were thinking about the pedestrian when it comes to those sorts of things.
Commissioner Goldman?
I will definitely echo the pedestrian safety. I personally am a walker all over this city, and it's a very walkable city, and it could be wonderful for more housing and people living here and being able to get to grocery stores, restaurants, and everything, but they are going to need to feel safe walking. And, I think it can be it's such a great way to build community and be inviting if we're all out there walking, meeting neighbors and so forth, but it's a scary place to walk right now. So I think that should definitely be a priority when you're talking about multifamily units and, wanting people to use transit and move around. Also, I'm going to speak to young families, coming in here and living in multifamily units, having shared open space and proximity to parks and community centers, especially if you're, a family of, you've got young children in an apartment, you really want to get them out and, get that energy out and have safe spaces and places for them to be. And I also think less parking, more encouragement of people moving. It's such a great walkable neighborhood. We do have transit, but like Commissioner Kirby said, it is frustrating to be on the bus and watch cars pass. That is often why I'll walk from one end of the city to this end, because it's faster for me to walk, even though it's scary. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And thank you for this.
Yeah, I bless you. I echo what my colleagues have said as far as walkability. As somebody who drives to this meeting, but lives very close to my colleagues, I recognize that a developer will include the parking that they feel like is needed to be able to rent or to sell their units. And so I believe in the developers will do what they need to do there, but that the city shouldn't come down with a firm hand on those parking requirements. And when I was on the Planning Commission, I know we actually reduced those, the number of parking units, parking spaces required. So yeah, I just think the city should step out of the business of mandating what's really a requirement, and developers will figure that out. Walkability, but I think the one thing that, as I look at this, not with my former public facilities and looking at the parks and community centers appeals to me, not as a planning commissioner, but as a rent stabilization commissioner. I think the single thing that's most important for me is affordability. We are building units that price our own residents out, and that we need to have workforce affordable housing, and whatever we can do to get to that price point. We do a good job with the low income, but we are doing an abysmal job with getting workforce housing. And it's not on this list, but that would be the number one thing I think of as a rent stabilization commissioner. Commissioner Copeland.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the proximity to parks and community centers. I think as we start building larger and doing away with green space and private space and community space in buildings, we definitely need to have our neighborhood parks and community centers where you can go to events, meet with your neighbors, take a walk with your dog, and just enjoy nature, because we're often not allowed to do that at home anymore. So I think that's very important. As far as access to neighborhood amenities, I agree with Commissioner Goldman. I used to walk everywhere, about 5 miles a day, and it was a great way to meet neighbors and make dog friends, and stop in, see new shops, stop in the parks, and take a break, and it was great. But some things happen. We have to also, that's not for everybody. Because of safety issues that happened and also health reasons, I can't do that anymore. I have neighbors who work in entertainment. There's a camera operator. He has to haul equipment to multiple sites, up in the valley or elsewhere. During the day, he's got to have a place to park his car. It's not feasible to hop on a bus or take ride shares, hundreds of dollars, multiple locations. There's another person in my building that does emergency road service, and he's running out the door and off to fix somebody, with their broken battery or lock themselves out any time of day or night. There's a makeup artist. We have a senior building across the street, and many of them have mobility issues. They need to have their cars to get to their medical appointments or to do, and they have 48 units and 27 parking spots, and somehow they thought that would be suitable, and it's not. So the handful that don't have cars have caregivers that have to park somewhere. So I think when it comes to parking, as Chair Bass said, on the one hand, maybe that the developers will, if they don't provide what is needed, then they won't rent the units. But all of us unfortunately can't be walking and scootering and hopping on and off buses everywhere we go. And I think, I don't know how our population has changed now, but I think before it was at least 60% was over 38 or whatever the number was. And as you age and people have kids to take to school, they have dogs to take to dog care, they have activities, there's always going to be a need for parking. Hopefully there's a decreased need for parking when we can do some of this development that's close to transit, has a grocery store underneath, there's a building that's coming up that has going to have a Costco underneath, I read the other day as well, elsewhere. So I think for some people that reduced parking and more amenities close by will work, but in some of our, like our rent stabilized older neighborhoods, they're definitely going to still need the parking, but so I think we still need to have city parking, with our businesses, stores, and on the street. But hopefully there will be a reducing, as Commissioner Goldman said, if our streets are safe. Certainly in the evening, I would much rather walk, somewhere with friends to meet for dinner, meet for drink, patronize our local businesses, but we do have to feel safe, and there have been a lot of issues with that. Certainly just with myself, I've had 2 physical assaults and attempted mugging in the last few years, and so then you don't feel so safe walking around, like you used to. So I think if we focus on having clean, safe streets, we can certainly encourage that walkability and that using the amenities that are close to us and patronizing our local businesses. So I think it's a combination of things that we can get creative and handle. Thank you.
So our next question is alluding to what the chair had mentioned. We are considering a variety of housing types, and they're all priorities in some sense, but we did want to highlight what are your thoughts about certain types of housing types, where they're most appropriate, to what scale, or what should be a priority once again.
Because I've already stated my preference on here, I will say that, and I recognize in the last question you asked about the trade-offs, like go taller, go denser, if it's going to mean that we can actually house the people in our community. Anyone else?
I think that's the only answer I can come up with to try to solve this problem. To me, you list the types here. All of these are important to me. All housing is important to me. I do think, I want to take a moment to say that the city of West Hollywood, I think, does an amazing job we've had a long-standing high percentage for inclusionary housing. We have a unique inclusionary housing program in that we require both affordable or very low or low and then moderate, and we make them alternate back and forth in each building so that we don't have a whole bunch of one. Obviously, it does end up with the low income because that's the highest need, and I think that's the unit we start with usually, or give them the option to start with. But I think that compared to other cities, we're doing an amazing job. We just need to do better continuously and try to set the example for other cities to follow along, show that inclusionary housing does work, because it has worked here in West Hollywood. I mean, that's where many of our units have come online over the years, and get rid of this argument that, you know, even doing 10% or 15% in our surrounding communities, they can't do it. That's baloney. We've been doing 20% for years. I say keep doing what we're doing, and again, follow more higher and more dense.
Commissioner Goldman?
So first, quickly, I just want to clarify, when I speak about safety, I mean I'm afraid of getting hit by cars. I'm sorry to hear about but I fortunately have not had any issues with pedestrians on the street, but I am very terrified of getting hit by traffic. So some work there is desperately needed. But here, I really think affordable options for low-income households is important, especially because we have all these great businesses, but a lot of the employees can't live in West Hollywood. And even though we have this great minimum wage, it's still, you know, not affordable. So wouldn't it be great if we could have people that work at these local businesses and can also live and be part of the community? And then the other thing is, I think housing options for older adults. I have lived in, now I'm on my second building, but where there are older adults with mobility issues and they just can't leave their building because they can't get down the steps, you know, or things like that. So if there are ways to provide options there.
Commissioner Coleman?
Commissioner Goldman raises a good point. I think particularly in some of our aging housing that's not mobility accessible for many people, and the unit swapping hopefully will help with some of those issues. But still, if you have what we call one of the dingbat buildings, you have steps to get to the carport. You have steps to get to the front, and sometimes they're steep. And so definitely housing options for older adults, I think, is as we have an aging in place, you know, mantra here in West Hollywood. The co-living opportunities in the workforce housing is something that it's come up a lot. And what was surprising to me was, you know, if there were a way to do this where it was actually attainable for people, as you say, even on our minimum wage, but when we're talking about co-living and the numbers are thrown out like, okay, we'll rent 5 rooms and they'll share one kitchen and we're going to charge each of them $1,500, $1,800 a month, that's not going to really help with that. If it was half of that, then great, that would work. So I would love to see us come up with an option that actually would be attainable for those, you know, working. And certainly what's been presented so far at $1,500, $1,800 to have a room and share a kitchen with multiple people is not really livable. So I'd love to see with something better option for that as well. I think that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
I think we have one more question, right?
Yes. Okay, so this one's probably the most complex question. We're trying to identify what housing capacity can look like distributed across the city. Because as we know, some areas are more built out than others, and some areas are more sensitive or have more sensitive populations than others. So we've been trying to identify what are areas that we want to maintain as is versus enhance, so smaller zoning changes versus transform, which is a larger capacity change or overhaul of the zoning district. And so I have a map of the city. The bus symbols represent what the new K line extension would look like, the new subway, when it does come in and hopefully less than 20 years, and they're focused on San Vicente, Fairfax and Santa Monica, and La Brea, Santa Monica. But I also have a second map here that tells a bigger story about where the distribution of residential currently exists today. So you can see that there's quite a lot of saturation happening in the central city, as well as some parts in the west side, but not so, or some parts on the east side, but not so much on the west side or the south side. And that's obviously it lines up with our zoning patterns around lower density residential on the west side and higher residential density on the central area and the east side. So the question here is understanding that these zoning patterns exist and understanding that some areas are more built out than others. Where are we comfortable putting zoning changes in or housing capacity in versus other areas?
Let's just keep going the way we have.
I'll start, and I'll probably be the most controversial. I think there just needs to increase in all levels, in all areas of the city. People who own individual homes are protected in that they own their home and no one's going to make them build on it. So that would, I'm not trying to take anyone's property away, and I'm not trying to build on their property. I'm just saying that we need to look as a city, what's good for our residents here, now, and long term. And the only way to make housing more affordable is to increase supply of housing in the long run. And so we need to increase housing all over the place. We can do it by meeting our RHNA goals and focusing on certain areas of the city at certain times, but everyone needs to prepare for the idea that they're going to have, we need to increase housing across all areas of the city. So that's what I'll say about that.
I agree with Commissioner Kirby's. Not really a reason to repeat too much of that, but I do think it might be a good idea to start where it's less dense and you can build, and then kind of work up from there.
I will say ditto, with the exception that I am terrified of our rent-stabilized units being removed and being replaced by non-rent stabilized units. There is a housing security that comes with a rent stabilized unit that cannot be replicated without the state changing laws. Commissioner Copeland gave an example earlier, but there is one on Ogden, about a block away from me, where there were about 8 rent stabilized units. The proposal came in to reduce the number to 7, so that it was reduced with fewer housing units. And then because they evicted everybody, now it became a hotspot for undesirable activities, so they tore it down. And for about 8 or 9 years now, we've had an empty lot there. So there are about, I think I'm remembering the numbers correct. I think it went 8 from 7. It could have been 10 to 9. Forget what the numbers are exactly, but we lost all those units, and eventually something's going to be built there because their entitlement has probably expired at this point in time. So they're going to come in for something else, and they're not going to be rent-stabilized units. And all of those people lost their housing. So I would be an advocate against that. If we can somehow weave that thread to go to more dense, like my colleagues have said, but not at the expense of our rent-stabilized units. Thank you. Commissioner Copeland.
I agree with what Chair Bass just said. Actually, was in my notes as well, is whatever would be the minimal amount of displacement involved. And when we talk about rent-stabilized units, I'm talking about those people that are currently housed and can afford their rent-stabilized units, as opposed to being displaced. And then maybe in 8 or 9 years, we'll have some rent-stabilized units for someone else, but they'll be at a much higher rate. I think displacement is my number one concern, as well as, we do have a lot of vacancies already. So I would love to see take a look at that. Why is that, and where are those units, and what's the pricing of those units? Because if we have the highest vacancy rate in the area, what are the reasons for that? And are we going to keep doing that and making that worse, or how can we, actually put people into that housing? So I'd love to see something really focused on that. And little to no displacement, definitely. Whether that means transforming, some vacant commercial properties into housing or mixed-use development, or, with some workforce housing that people can actually afford. Come up with some ideas, but definitely displacement is my number one concern, because we've seen it happen, and then the result of the end result of that has not been positive in terms of having other places for them to go that they can afford, or bringing in housing that people can afford that replaces it. So the formula is what sort of frightens me. This displacement is the number one concern. And if there are certain areas that have more rent-stabilized housing, maybe that's an area that we should not be number one priority to demolish and build these buildings and displace people. Thank you, Chair, that I'm done.
Thank you. I think that brings us toward, please, I'll turn the time back over to you.
That concludes my presentation. I just want to say thank you for your time and your comments today. They're extremely thoughtful, and we will take them into account, so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we are moving on to the reason most people are in the room right now, the appeal section of our meeting. It's item number 9. I'm going to describe the process since we have 3 appeals tonight, but I'm happy to kind of repeat it as we go through the appeals. The first thing that the commission will do is turn to our legal counsel for a staff report. They will review the staff report, and we will ask questions at that point in time. Then I will turn it over to the person who is appealed, either the tenant or the landlord, depending on the case. They will have 5 minutes. They can divide that time in however they want. They'll have 5 minutes. They can do 4 minutes in 1, 2.5, however you want. We just ask you to tell us up front. Then the respondent will be able to speak. They will also have 5 minutes, but they cannot divide that time. And then the person appealing will have an opportunity to rebut the arguments. That's the basic process, so you all kind of know how this will go forward. And so with that, we will turn to our first appeal this evening, first of 3, and that one is appeal number 4966 at 966 North San Vicente. And Mr. Martz, do we have a staff report?
Yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. This is Kellen Martz, legal counsel to the Rent Stabilization Commission. As the chair said, this is D-4966 966 North San Vicente Boulevard. You'll notice I'm sitting on this side. I'll switch over to the other side after this appeal. Tonight, this is an appeal filed by the tenant, and I apologize if I mispronounce it, but tenant Anthony Eugenio filed this appeal. Tenant has been living in the property since 1992. This is an appeal that is arguing that the decision is clearly in error and contrary to provisions of the RSO or state law. The original application was filed for 3 issues: access to the outside water source, unauthorized access to the unit issues, and the tenant's ability to use the Zelle platform to pay rent. That 3rd issue related to Zelle was withdrawn by the tenant. The hearing was conducted on November 20th, 2024. Both parties were present at the hearing. For the outside water source, the tenant testified that the owner removed his ability to use a water hose, and that the tenants were actually allowed to use that water hose. They used it to clean the common areas, water the plants, and to wash down items owned by the tenant. The owner argued that the tenant was not allowed to use the water hose, that they had been instructed in the past not to use the water hose, and that it was not part of their lease. The unauthorized access to the unit was not appealed, so that is not before you tonight. And then again, the Zelle issue was withdrawn, so that is not before you tonight. So the only issue before the Rent Commission tonight is the access to the water source outdoors. And then again, the appeal was filed when the hearing examiner found that it was not a housing service and there would be no rent reduction. And then again, the appeal claims that the decision is clearly in error and contrary to specific provisions of the Rent Stabilization Ordinance and or state law. The tenant's appeal argues that the water is required under California Civil Code 1941. And then again, the outdoor water, or the unauthorized access to the unit issue is withdrawn. So before you, the question is there substantial evidence in the record reasonably supporting the hearing examiner's decision regarding access to outside water? Staff believes that the hearing examiner did not err and there is substantial evidence in the record to support such a decision. One thing I want to point out is in your staff report, we always put the two definitions of a housing service, pre-1999 tenancies and post-tenancies. Most of the issues that you see are post-1999 tenancies. We are, for better and for worse, in 2025, and so it's been a long time since we see cases, but we do occasionally that are 1999 and before. That is one of those here. Again, the tenant moved in before 1999, 1992. And the reason that is important is the definition of a housing service is a little bit more strict. And so they're provided for you here. It impacts this decision because it is more strict, but staff does believe that under either definition, the hearing examiner's decision is correct, but especially under the more strict reading of a housing service definition. Staff would also point out that California Civil Code under our reading does not require the landlord to provide the outdoor water access. California Civil Code 1941 is a broad provision in state law that speaks to habitability of a unit, and outdoor water access is not a required part of that. There could be facts presented in other cases where 1941 could come into play, but here we don't believe it is. It's not a habitability issue to have water outdoors to clean the patio and to water plants. It's more of a lifestyle issue. Habitability deals with things that are actually living, like having hot water to take a shower and wash your dishes, windows that shut in the heat, and those type of things. And then to the question of whether this was a housing service or not, staff believes, and we talk about this a lot, that the commission doesn't substitute its judgment for the hearing examiner. If there's credible evidence in the record to support what the hearing examiner found, then the decision must be upheld, and staff believes that that's what we have here. From the record, the testimony that was provided at the hearing and the record before you, there were two conflicting versions of what were the facts, quote unquote. The landlord said that they never had access, it was not part of their lease, and then the tenant said I was allowed to do it for a number of years. And so staff believes that the hearing examiner correctly determined that there was credible evidence from the landlord and the documents that this was not a housing service. And so on that basis, staff recommends that the commission affirm the hearing examiner's decision and adopt resolution RSC 25-681. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Do any of my colleagues have questions of legal counsel this time? Thank you. That's a first. So we will move on now to the parties involved. We'll start first of all with the tenant, Mr. Eugenio, I believe. Again, please correct us. When you begin, state your name, city of residence, and how you would like to divide your time.
Hi, my name is Anthony Reed Eugenio. I live at 966 North San Vicente. I'd like to probably take all my 5 minutes in presentation. And may I proceed with my comments?
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Anthony Reed Eugenio. I live at 966 North San Vicente for over 30 years, September of 1992. I believe that the hearing examiner's decision was incorrect due to the fact that he thought that this maybe was an isolated incident, or he believed Mrs. Ortiz when she said, I never gave him permission to use the common area water, even after 32 years of usage. The law states that turning off water to make tenants' life difficult, especially after long tenancy, is viewed as retaliatory harassment. Code 1942.5, retaliatory conduct is illegal in California. Code AB 1482 protects tenants from against retaliation for reporting lease violations. Code 789.3, a landlord shall not, with the intent to terminate the occupancy under any lease, etc., but not limited to water, heat, constructive eviction harassment, even though it's common area water. If the shutoff affects your use and enjoyment of the unit, such as preventing you from cleaning or maintaining the property, allowing the space to become unsanitary or unsafe, killing plants that you've maintained for years constitutes constructive eviction, and tenant harassment, both of which are prohibited under West Hollywood's rent stabilization's ordinance. Essential service. Water is considered an essential service, and landlords are required to provide it. Christina Foss, an old tenant of hers that lived at the property from 1986 to 2008, 22 years, forwarded a letter to the commissioner explaining that all the tenants had access and was never told that they couldn't use it. Dear Mr. Vinalon, I'm writing this letter in full support of Anthony Reed Eugenio's appeal. I have nothing to gain from this letter, but have some useful information to share. I hope to attend the hearing in person, but I'm unable to change my work schedule. I lived at 966 and a half San Vicente from 1986 to 2008. It was a wonderful time. We were a close community, always watching out for each other. There was never an issue regarding the outside water usage. Each tenant took care to keep the plants and shrubbery outside watered and clean. We were never prohibited from using water from the outside. The owner did not provide a gardener, so it was to the landlord's enormous benefit that we tenants took care of the gardens. It's critical to remember that these are 100-year-old, unique wooden cottages. God forbid there should be a fire and there is no water. I do vividly recall one instance when we had extremely strong Santa Ana winds, which caused a tree in my yard to hit a power line, resulting in a very dangerous sparks flying all over. Luckily, nothing caught fire, but we were ready with the water hose. I almost add that I was very happy to live there and did not leave because I wanted to. In 2008, my cottage suddenly developed a rat problem. From there was dead rats in the yard and inside. Mrs. Ortiz sent no-named exterminator who sprayed a white powder inside my unit. As I was dealing with the health problems at the time and my immune system was compromised, I became seriously ill. Ms. Ortiz did not help decontaminate the unit. Sadly, I was too weak to fight and eventually moved. I still live in WeHo and a lovely apartment and by a good, decent landlords. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Best regards, Christina Foss, 310-382-0024. After prevailing with the Rent Stabilization Department and code enforcement during the filing process, Mrs. Ortiz retaliated by filing an odor abuse claim, perjuring herself twice to obtain it, then severing the common water area in revenge during one of our meetings with the city, the meeting that you were referring to, sir. Arriving home after that meeting, I realized what she had done and filed a harassment complaint, which is currently pending. So there was more to the story. This is not an isolated incident. It's just a piece of her harassment making my life difficult. I have had access to that water for 32 years and was never told that I couldn't use it, only to use it sparingly in the summer months. So please restore the water so all the plants and shrubbery can live, and so that the trash cans can be kept clean, and for the common area to remain free of uncleanliness for all of us to enjoy, instead of this allowing this deterioration of soil contamination. I brought some pictures to show you. These were a few months ago, so it's worsened since then. These are, may I give it to the counselor to show you from here?
If those were not included in the original hearing, we can't because those are
well,
new
I'll
evidence.
just stand right here and show you. There's the trash can. These are the dying shrubbery. And my beautiful neighbor's apartment, which has never been cleaned since she's lived there, and I usually hose down her place for her.
Are these
Yes, as a matter of fact,
We
yes,
have
sir.
them. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't know where we are as far as time. Do you know?
Our secretary can tell us. You have 13 seconds. Would you like to reserve the 13 seconds or use them now?
No, I understand. I see that they have a witness from 3 years ago to an event that occurred. I don't know why that would be relevant to today's hearing. So outside of this topic, outside of that purview, I will object, and I would hope that you would understand that it's probably irrelevant of what they're going to forward to us. Thank you so much for allowing me this time. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have any time remaining?
2 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And we'll now turn, I'm going to ask my colleagues really quickly, since he has no rebuttal time, if my colleagues have any questions of the tenant at this time. Would you please step back up? I have one question for you. You read a letter from somebody to us
Yes.
tonight. What was the reason that was not available for the hearing examiner.
She couldn't, oh, it was. She emailed it to him, and I have it on my phone. I could show you that she emailed it to him.
Okay, so
And
the
he
hearing
did-
examiner had that
And he
evidence.
did respond to her and.
Could you speak
said,
into the
"You're
microphone
more
for
than
us?
welcome to
Yeah,
come."
we need you to use the microphone.
Just, step up to the microphone.
She emailed the gentleman, he responded and said absolutely she could come. We got permission. But then last minute she said, Reed, unfortunately I have to work. And I said, no problem, thank you so much. And I asked the gentleman if I could read the email letter and he said yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Copeland, did you have a question?
Not at this time, but I may have some questions if we can recall before.
Okay,
Thank you.
before I close the public hearing,
Right.
I'll ask again.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will turn to the landlord. I have, I don't have a name actually here, so if you could please introduce yourself. You're in the city of residence, and again, you cannot divide your time, so you'll have all 5 minutes now.
Understood. Good evening. My name is William Bogdoyan. I'm the attorney representing the landlord.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So, as far as the letter that was written, that was not provided to the landlord, and it was not present during the actual hearing. So, that is new evidence now that's being read into the record, and that cannot be taken into consideration. Not only that, it is hearsay evidence, and Rent Stabilization Regulation 60020 states, no individual rent adjustment shall be granted unless supported by the preponderance of the relevant and credible evidence noted in the hearing record, which that letter was not, and no individual rent adjustment shall be supported solely by hearsay evidence, which that clearly is. So, here, there is no error in decision, and there is no specific provision in the Rent Stabilization Ordinance contrary to the hearing examiner's ruling. Civil Code Section 1941, nor any other civil code or municipal code requires provision of access to water in common areas or providing access to common areas so that grass doesn't or plants don't die, as maintaining habitability of the dwelling or a required housing service. Nowhere does it say that in any state or local law. During the original hearing, there was ample evidence provided which proved there was no permission ever given to utilize an outdoor water source, nor any agreement that a common area water source was to be made a condition of the tenancy. Moreover, the lease agreement, nowhere in the lease agreement does it state anything about the landlord providing an outdoor water source as part of the tenancy. There's no evidence in the record proving that the tenant had permission. The lease does not provide permission. The property manager has testified during the hearing that the tenant was told numerous times not to use the outdoor hose. The analysis for a downward rent adjustment is at a minimum twofold. First, before a downward rent adjustment is provided, it must be found that there was a housing service that was removed. The hearing examiner reasonably found, based on the facts in the record, that there was no housing service that was removed. Secondly, if there is a finding of a housing service reduction, then factors must be considered as to whether if a reduction in rent is warranted, given there was a housing service reduction. Whether a reduction in rent is warranted, several substantive factors must be considered. None of the substantive factors to be considered lean toward providing a downward rent adjustment, and all of the substantive grounds lean significantly towards not granting a downward rent adjustment. One substantive ground to be considered is that the issue complained of by the tenant does not really affect the tenant's living situation. Another ground is that there's no significance of the alleged reduced service in relation to the quality of life, safety, health, convenience, or comfort of the tenant. It's all outside. It's a water hose. It has nothing to do with the inside home, and there's no effect in whether even the common areas are livable or not livable, or sanitary or unsanitary. There's no habitability issue, as again, no state or local law requires an outdoor hose as part of maintaining habitability. If it does become unsanitary, then it is up to the, not up to the tenant, it is even up to the landlord to make sure it is sanitary, to make sure it is clean. But a water hose is not a requirement to having that done. There is no market, another ground, substantive ground to be considered is that there is no market value in the housing service, allegedly reduced, as outdoor hoses are never made a condition of a rental agreement. I'm a unlawful detainer attorney, and I have never seen that condition be in a lease agreement. So additionally, there was no reliance. The tenant never relied on the fact that an outdoor hose would be provided as part of the lease agreement, as the lease agreement, again, is void of any outdoor hose allowance or permission language. Additionally, another substantive ground that's taken into consideration.
That's your time.
That's time?
You can finish this thought and then you'll be done.
The current rent is approximately $590. The current market value is much higher. So even if there is a housing reduction, with that factor taken into consideration, no reduction in rent is warranted. Therefore, there's no abuse of discretion, there's no misapplication of law, and the hearing examiner's decision must stand and be affirmed.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the landlord's representative at this time? Commissioner Copeland, we'll go with you first.
Thank you. Sorry, I turned myself off. Quick question. Is there a gardener or lawn maintenance service that waters the plants and shrubs on the property that the hose was put there for or meant for? Or are these common area plants and shrubs, or are they personal?
It's all common area plants and shrubs. It has nothing, none of the shrubs or plants are in like a dedicated patio area for the tenant. It's all just common area. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
For right now, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Kerpes.
Yes, thank you. So I'm not a lawyer. So from what I understand, the evidence was that basically, and I'm only talking about, I understand that the law does not require access to outside water. I'll agree to that. But in terms of the tenant's use of the water and then no longer being able to use it, first of all, can you explain to me what it is now that's preventing anyone from using, whether they have the authority to or not, but what prevents people from using the water right now? Has the hose been removed? Has there been a lock put on it?
I believe the hose has been removed and there has been a lock placed on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so during the hearing, I understand that it was the resident manager and the owner who testified, or
Yes.
Okay,
And they're both here.
They both testified there that there's never been access. We've never granted use of the water during that time, so it's their testimony. Explain to me why. Again, this is the part where I'm not a lawyer, but tell me why that's different hearsay than someone else. Or why it's not hearsay, I guess, or...
So hearsay is any out-of-court statement used for the truth of the matter asserted. So essentially, hearsay is anything said outside of the court or the actual hearing itself.
So we've got two individuals that are speaking to the
At the
court or
hearing.
in the hearing that can be cross-examined and
Correct.
on the truthfulness of their statements. And we have one tenant who's saying the opposite, basically.
Ex-tenant.
That's
That letter is from someone who is not a tenant currently.
No, the current tenant, the current tenant.
Well, the current tenant was there, testified himself, but the letter he was...
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just talking about, we've got one tenant in the hearing saying, no, I did have access to the water.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything, I mean, other than the fact that it's not mentioned in the lease as granting permission, am I understanding correctly that those are the facts of the case about the access to the water, or the authorization to utilize the outside water or not? We've got two individuals that testified, we've got one individual that testified, no, I did. There's no evidence to say that he was ever granted permission. Am I missing anything in terms of evidence on that specific issue?
No, there's no evidence
Okay.
showing that he was ever granted permission.
Okay.
There is evidence, not hearsay evidence, actual evidence that tenant was able to cross-examine on.
Correct, yeah. So
Saying
I
that-
just want to make sure that I've stated it correctly, but
Correct.
my understanding,
Yes.
so I'm not missing anything. So as a, how does, obviously the on-site manager is probably there more than the owner is, but probably neither are there necessarily as frequently as the tenant. And the tenant claims, I mean, I don't think anyone's disputing the fact that the tenant has been using the water, maybe not authorized, but has been using the water over the years. How do we deal with situations like that where somebody has spent 32 years in a residence where they've had access to something? Access, they did have access. They may not have had authorization, but they had access to it. And they've been utilizing it. No fines, no penalties, maybe over the years some warnings if we accept that. And now all of a sudden that's cut off. You're just saying that there's no remedy for that, that we just should ignore that he's been using it for 32 years?
Well, in order to discuss a remedy for something, there must be something done. There must be something wrong that has been done. Now, if he's never received authorization to use something and he's only been told not to use it, just because he kept using it doesn't mean now he's just allowed to use it. If you're told that you're not supposed to do something and you keep doing it for long enough, it doesn't just automatically give you permission to keep doing it.
Yeah, you mentioned you deal with this sort of law with tenant
Yeah.
landlords. So there are, can you tell me why this doesn't fall into the classification of where he was doing something that the landlord knew about and continued to do it and there was no repercussions, and after a while that becomes part of your tenancy? Like if I have a roommate and my landlord says, you're not supposed to have a roommate, but doesn't do anything when I have a roommate, after a while they can't evict me for that. So how does that not apply in this situation?
I think you're referring to waiver.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, so waiver is always in the realm of argument. I'm not saying that argument doesn't apply here. I'm saying there can't be waiver because it was never implicitly or explicitly even permitted. Something has to be at least implicitly permitted for it to be waived. It was never implicitly waived because he's been told numerous times, don't use the water.
Okay.
Even if you do use it sparingly, that doesn't rise to the level of now you have the right to the hose. It doesn't automatically become a condition of your tenancy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Copeland, I think you have another question?
Yeah, I do. I think I'd asked before, but didn't get the answer about these common area plants, shrubs, whatever. Is there a lawn service or gardener that would have been coming there to water and maintain these grounds aside from the tenants that's using the hose that it's meant for?
So from what I know, there's not a specific gardener that comes, but there is a handyman and I want to say property manager, but he comes and takes care of the grounds, and that's the gentleman in the glasses right there with his hand raised.
So normally that person would be taking care of all the plants and the shrubs and so forth?
Sure, if necessary. But again, it is not necessary to take care of shrubs. It's not a fire hazard. It's not causing anyone any type of danger. So even if it does dry out, it dries out. It's not a condition, again, of the tenancy. It's not an issue of habitability. It's a non-issue. Habitability and whether there's anything wrong has nothing to do with aesthetics. It has to do with functionality.
Is there, so these plants were they provided, you said they were common area, not personal, so they were provided at the property by the owners, or these are the tenants' personal plants that are around the area? Whose plants are they that we're talking about?
Well, the
maintaining?
common area plants and shrubbery, it belongs to the property owner. And if there's any individually owned plants, then the tenant can take care of his own individual plants with his own water, not the common area water.
Okay, I believe at the hearing, the testimony was that the tenant was told within the last 2 years not to use the water anymore. Was there something that precipitated that instruction after so many years? That, why now? Okay, you can't use this water anymore, that within the last 2 years?
I believe there was instruction not to use the water previously also, but since that instruction was not being adhered to, then within the past 2 years, it's become more, I guess.
But there was no
Common.
written notice provided or any
No.
kind of okay.
Same as there's no written notice, there's no instruction to not use the water in writing. There's no instruction there's no agreement that use of some hose in the common area is allowed. Additionally, the use of the common area hose doesn't go onto tenant's bill. So I don't understand how it would be ever implied that you're allowed to just run up a bill that you don't pay for. And I don't mean you specifically, I mean the royal you, the tenant, without any type of written agreement. So if there's if use of the common area hose would create a bill for someone else to pay, the landlord, why
I
would?
want to keep just answers to
Yeah.
questions so that we
Okay.
don't make the time uneven between folks. So please
Understood.
just,
Yeah.
as concisely as possible, answer
I think
questions.
they answered my question about the 2 years, I think. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldman, did you have one?
I'm wondering why there was a lock placed now if there was never authorization to use the water. Wouldn't there have always been a lock there? Why all of a sudden is there a lock placed on there?
There's all of a sudden a lock because after numerous instructions not to use the water, that instruction was not obeyed and adhered to, and therefore you have to take further measures, and that's the measure that was taken to make it so that there's no other option but not to use the common area hose.
Okay, thank you.
I see no more questions for the landlord. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do we have questions of the tenant at this time? Because you only have 2 seconds, you would be able to get less than a sentence out. But if you want to give us 1 sentence, you can give us 1 sentence.
So you're asking me if you have questions for me?
I'm asking my colleagues if they have questions, and I'm not seeing any at this time. So you have 2 seconds. We let him run on a little bit, so I'll give you 1 sentence. But then
Implied
after-
consent, and Fred Tadek has never watered those plants.
Thank you. You did 2 seconds very well. I just want to try to be as fair as possible with all parties. I hope you'll all understand that's what I'm trying to do here. So with that, I will close the public hearing. There is no further comment at this time. We have closed any public comment, so we will turn to deliberation, and I'm curious if do we have questions of staff before we move on? I think staff has questions for us, there's comments.
Yes, Chair, a few things. First, I would recommend that you ask for public comment. I think that was skipped.
Okay, well then I will ask for public comment at this time. Is there anyone else who chooses to speak that is... what if the landlord themselves wants to speak at this point in time?
This is just public comment, not argument. So typically it goes in the middle, so...
Because I see somebody raising their hand, but I believe you're the landlord. Then your time has been exhausted by your attorney.
Great, okay. So seeing no other public comment, I do have some responses on some legal issues. There was discussion about a letter from a former tenant. From what I've seen so far, that does appear to be new evidence unless there is reason why it wasn't presented otherwise. I don't think that has been presented, but the commission is free to discuss that in further detail, and I can help with that if needed. Second, the landlord's attorney discussed hearsay, and if that is accepted or not. The explanation tonight by the attorney was not totally correct. Our regulations do allow hearsay evidence to be considered. However, it cannot be the sole basis for your decision. So, so long as it is one part of your decision, you may consider hearsay evidence. And then, as our staff report did note, whatever you decide, the tenant is allowed to submit a new rent application to the city if they believe the landscaping not being taken care of is a housing service issue that warrants a rent reduction, which would be separate from access to the water. Same with the, I heard tonight, garbage cleanliness issue. And then parties can always speak with the city, potentially code enforcement on any of those issues. And then it's not technically a legal issue, but as the commission often notes, that the parties are free to work together to try to reach a compromise. And then lastly, as to the question of waiver, the question of waiver is a question of fact, not, so I would recommend you review that with open eyes. New evidence as to whether something has been waived or not can't be considered. You have to consider only what is in the record. But waiver is an issue. And then housing service, the landlord's attorney discussed kind of the landscaping. Whether that's a housing service is not before you tonight, but I think that it could be considered housing service. We don't have all those facts because they weren't fleshed out, but under both 1999 and prior definitions and 1999 after, landscaping, plants, and whatnot in common area cases could potentially be a housing service. We just don't have those facts before us, and it's not before you to decide that issue tonight. So those are the legal issues I wanted to bring up.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. That's one of the reasons the public hearing is closed. So we will take no more public comment at this point in time. And I'll find you out of order. I'm sorry. We have to be fair to all sides. So I will say I asked about the letter being presented to the hearing examiner for the very reason our legal counsel asked, is because I was curious why that wasn't presented to the hearing examiner. Recognizing it is before us and we were able to see it tonight, my understanding is that the person just simply couldn't attend the hearing, and that's what, so the hearing examiner did not have that evidence before them. But I'll turn to Commissioner Kirpies to begin.
I have a question first. I just want to make sure that, thank you for the explanation, both in the staff report and just now to clarify some things. I just want to make sure I'm following you. I don't quite understand what you were saying about the waiver part at the end. Because did the attorney say anything that was incorrect about that, or?
The explanation of what a waiver is was correct. Whether there was a waiver here tonight, I think the landlord clearly said there was no waiver. You should not take that as true. You should decide that for yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's why I was asking the questions, was to try to figure out whether a waiver had been answered. And then the other thing, just before we get started, I just want clarification. I interpreted the tenant's response to your question about the letter. There seemed to be, in my perception, there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about the question and the answer. And I understood that the letter went to the city staff after the hearing to ask if they could bring the letter here. I don't think that the letter had anything to do with the hearing, but I could be wrong.
I understand it the same way.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thanks.
But my question was, why didn't it go to the hearing examiner? Since the hearing examiner had to make a decision based off of what was before them, not what's before us. That's why I asked that question. I have the microphone, so I will simply say that there are situations, I'll use my own rent-controlled unit as an example. There is an outdoor faucet at my building that I use regularly. And I've never gotten permission from my landlord to use it. In reverse, I've never been told not to use it. And I would consider it a reduction of housing service if that was removed. That's my own personal perspective. And with that in mind, I moved in after 1999, so there's a different definition. So having said that, I have a lot of personal empathy, I guess might be the word for it, for the tenant here. But I want to explain that sometimes the decisions we make here as a commission are difficult because they're not, do we believe the tenant or do we believe the landlord? or to what degree do we believe each one of them, but rather a question of, and it's very clear, we look at what the hearing examiner decided, and we say, could a reasonable person have made that same decision with the evidence in front of them? And so that's a very different question as to whether or not we believe the landlord or the tenant, and that particular question is irrelevant here tonight. It's, do we think that with what was before the hearing examiner, could a reasonable person have come to that conclusion? That doesn't mean I would have come to the same conclusion, just would a reasonable person. And I believe here, and one of the reasons I asked about that letter is because it is new evidence which we cannot consider, because it was not part of the evidence that was presented to the hearing examiner. So because we can't consider that letter, unless there was some reason that that person could not have gotten that letter to the hearing examiner at the time they made their decision, which is what I was asking about. And that happens sometimes. I don't believe that happened here. I believe a letter or an email could have been provided at the hearing. So because of that, though I believe I might have made a different decision than the hearing examiner, that's irrelevant. My position is that staff got this right with their recommendation, and that a reasonable hearing examiner, a reasonable person could have come to this same conclusion. And I'm particularly comfortable with that decision to support staff's recommendation, because if the question is the plant life being taken care of or allowed to die? Is the garbage being cleaned up? All of those questions are things that would be germane should the parties choose to adjudicate between themselves through the city's mediation program or through another hearing. And because the actual underlying issues of those things being taken care of can be addressed elsewhere without this question being disturbed, this decision being disturbed, I will vote to support staff's recommendation. Who would like to go next? Commissioner Kirpies?
Yeah, I will say ditto. I think that I agree with you 100%. I also live in a building that I have access. I have access because I'll get into the yard and I'll turn it on, but I've never been given permission to use the outdoor water. I don't use it for anything as important as the tenant had described when talking about cleaning off his catering, equipment. So that, my situation is not similar to that. But the fact that I access it, and I would be upset if I couldn't access it any longer. But absolutely, everything that you have said, I agree with. It would be a different standard, a whole different set of situation or set of facts. I too agree we should not be giving weight to the letter, the new evidence. The other side didn't have an opportunity to question that individual, or we have no idea about that individual, so we shouldn't weigh it. But ditto.
Commissioner Copeland?
I actually have a question for legal, but if that's okay, we can go back.
Yeah.
Attorney Martz, we're talking about tenancies commencing after January 1999 and the differences between them. And it says that services listed on the re-registration form accepted by the city, any other services actually provided by the landlord or agreed to by the landlord and tenant. So if there's not a formal agreement, but it's something that's still provided by the landlord, whether that's trash service to the curb, maintenance, water usage outside, that's not considered a service that's been provided after 1999, that wouldn't come under that umbrella. What you're saying is that it could potentially, in another hearing or another filing, come under maintenance or plants or whatever. I know that's one thing that's on the valuation guidelines, is removal of plants or common area, things like that. So you're saying that would not, that might be, in another type of hearing that might be relevant, but this is not a service that was actually provided by the landlord, even though it wasn't agreed to.
A little bit different. So we have to look at the date that the tenancy started. And
Right.
so I think you're looking at the tenancies commencing
Yeah.
after 1999,
Right.
but this is a 1992 property.
Right.
Or
So that's the
tenancy, excuse
difference.
me. And so on the staff report, it's the definition that's above.
Right.
And so that is a little bit tighter. But as to the tighter definition lists out most, not all of the housing services, whereas the post-1999
Any
gives the
is
carte
more
blanche.
general.
As
Right.
you said, if there
Right.
was a bouncy house in the property, that could be a housing service. It would not be unless actually listed on the lease pre-1999.
Right.
So,
So
yes.
I guess I wasn't clear. My question was, in this case, because of the dates and the difference in the standards between the two, this might not be considered a service provided by the landlord like it would after
Correct. That
1999.
is- yes.
But still, the maintenance and the lawn and the plants and so forth could be under that, relevant under that,
Without
in a different hearing
without prejudging anything,
without
yes,
prejudging anything, but potentially.
a
it
hearing
could.
examiner, I think, reasonably could find that way as to common area landscaping and keeping the garbage bins clean.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Do you have anything further? Do you want, since you have the floor?
No, I agree, I think, with what's been said so far. You know, I wanted to clarify that timeline because, you know, that date makes a lot of difference with this particular item, I think. You know, it's if you have a building, certainly as Commissioner Kirby says, I live in a building, I have plants in my little front garden area, and there's a hose there, and I use it, and other tenants use it, and we also have regular gardeners who come every week, and they use it, and fill the bird water feeders with it, and so forth, and that's everybody's it's there for use, right, you would assume. Particularly after, I've only been there 8 years, but if all of a sudden they came and said, no, you can't, nobody can use the water anymore, let your plants die or whatever. I mean, it would be very upsetting. It would be offensive, but I think with what we have to work with the dates and so forth, there's really nothing that we can, I can't see any reason why the hearing examiner clearly erred as far as the law on this with what was presented. And I think the attorney has clarified that for me, that although it's an unfortunate thing that happened, I don't think we can either remand it for that particular thing or reverse the decision with what we have to work with.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldman.
Yeah, after hearing clarification from council, I agree. And I too had access in a building to water outside and watered plants, and it is a shame to lose that. But yeah, I agree with my colleagues that what we have to work with in terms of the legal aspect of it, I don't think that a reasonable person could find otherwise. So I don't think that the hearing examiner erred in this case.
Thank you. With that in mind, having heard everybody, I think we are ready to proceed. I will move resolution RSC number 25681, a resolution of the Rent Stabilization Commission of the City of West Hollywood affirming the hearing examiner decision as to application D4966. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kirby seconds. Mr. Secretary, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Copeland,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirby,
Aye.
Chair Batson.
Aye. That motion carries. And so now I want to tell the folks who are here that if the parties have any further questions, you can reach out to the Rent Stabilization Division at 323-848-6450, by email at rsd@weho.org, or you may request an in-person appointment online at weho.org under the services menu. And I will just state in the record, I did see that there was some animosity here, and I would just encourage folks, my own personal opinion, but I'm going to state it anyway, that the city's mediation program would be an excellent place to go, and the city staff can tell you how to accomplish that. At this point, I think we should take a 5 to 10 minute recess, and then we'll come back for our next appeal. Okay, let's go back into our meeting at this point in time, and we're going to move on to our next appeal. Let me flip in my papers here to get the right numbers. Okay. So the process for this will be the exact same as the last one. As far as the procedures, I'll remind you when you come up. And this one is going to be, as we wait for our legal counsel, I'll just read into the record which appeal this is, and that's D4876CD1, which stands for Compliance Determination. And the address for this is 8558 Holloway Drive, number 102B. And I believe our legal counsel is ready to go now.
All right, swooping in at the last minute. This is Kellen Martz, legal counsel of the Rent Stabilization Commission. As the chair said, D-4876CD1. For the public, CD is for compliance determination. Property address 8558 Holloway Drive, number 102B. The appeal before you tonight was filed by the landlord. And again, this is a compliance determination decision that came out of a rent reduction hearing that resulted in several rent reductions issued. Before you tonight is only one, and that relates to the building directory and intercom system. Staff recommends affirming the hearing examiner's decision regarding the intercom and directory. Again, this results from an application from early 2024. The application was deemed D-4876. A decision was issued granting a rent reduction for a resident manager issue and the intercom directory issues. The decision was applicable to all affected common area tenants. And again, the building intercom/directory issue is the only matter before you tonight. And the question before you is there substantial evidence to reasonably support the hearing examiner's decision regarding the compliance determination on the building intercom and directory? And staff believes the answer to that question is yes. The hearing examiner's compliance determination reviewed the landlord's compliance determination request, documentation, and the tenant's written objection. The original decision required that the landlord, in order to return the rent to full on this matter, had to update the building intercom and mailroom directory with current tenant information and link the intercom system to the resident manager's phone number. The evidence submitted that there was an invoice, work orders, and a written statement did not sufficiently demonstrate that the intercom was connected to a live person. There were issues with it going to a non-live phone number for the property management company, and that the directory was current and properly maintained as to the tenants. The hearing examiner concluded, based on the tenant objection in the record, that the landlord had not substantially complied with the original decision. The landlord's appeal notes that there was a city inspection conducted 10 days after the compliance determination decision that showed that the intercom system was working. Staff would note that that would be considered new evidence, and so it cannot be considered in this appeal. Staff also notes that it's more appropriate for a landlord to submit a new compliance determination request if they believe the issues have been corrected. Two of the units had outdated listings in the directory per the tenant's objection. And again, that's outside of what you're looking at tonight, but the law does not require that there be perfect compliance, just substantial compliance. However, staff finds that the decision was supported by substantial evidence and not an error. So this concludes my report.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for legal counsel at this time? Seeing none, we will move to the public comment portion of this hearing. First, the landlord appealed, so I have Alex Galicia, I believe, will be first to speak. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, and are you here? Okay, it's your turn now. So you will come up, you will introduce yourself by name, city of residence, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Tell us how you'd like to divide that time, again, however you'd like, and you can begin at that point.
I will do maybe half of the time, and then if there is any questions later,
Okay.
I can use
Our
that.
secretary will let you know when 2.5 minutes are up.
My name
Thank
is
you.
Alex Galicia from Los Angeles, California. I'm a senior manager for 8558 Hollywood Drive, and I'm here with Cynthia, our on-site manager at 8558 Hollywood Drive. The reason why we're here is because We submitted a compliance determination to show that the intercom has always been working since day one. The former manager at this location, before she left the unit, she went and submitted all this hearing that we have from over a year. The only reason why I'm here is because I know that the intercom is working. It's $6, and we're not looking for $6 reduction. It's just the principle that the intercom has worked and has been working since we took over. For some reason, and for we don't know why or what the residents are trying to look for, but they continue to say that the intercom is not working. When I submitted the appeal, the only reason why I mentioned that the city was there, it was me showing evidence that it was not me, it was not a resident, it was not my on-site manager, it was a third-party person that showed up to the building and entered the code, and Cynthia answered the phone. That's the reason why I don't know when the first examination was made by the city, but I requested, and I was in contact with Brenda, and I was like, hey, can you let me know if for some reason you guys know when the inspection is gonna be happening? Maybe we can be there, we can see with you what's going on, how you're pressing the buttons, or what numbers are you calling. I never got a response from the city. The city never responded to me. I have the emails as well. They never said, oh, you know, I mean, we cannot tell you when the inspection is gonna take place or whatever. I just got ghosted. So when I did the appeal, I showed that the city inspector went to the property, dialed the number, and Cynthia's phone rang and she answered the call. That's the only thing that I can say. The intercom works and it has worked, and it's not about the money, it's about the principle that the intercom is working. That's all.
Thank you. How much time is left?
2 minutes and 54 seconds.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Same planning.
Do we have any questions for the landlord at this time? Seeing none, we thank you. We'll call you back up.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the tenant at this point in time, Kathleen Smith. I have a note here that that she's not attending.
But
We do have public comment. I was just going to call on the tenant first. So it's in the record we called. And now we will move on. We have public comment from 2 individuals. I have Diana Capri and followed by Eaton Caspi, I believe. I'm reading people's handwriting, so that you can do it in whichever order since there's only 2 of you, so you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and again, just state your name and city of residence, and you can begin.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Eitan Caspi. I've been a tenant at 8558 Holloway, apartment 106, for many years. I'm here today to respectfully voice my opposition to the landlord's appeal of the compliance determination, which rightly upheld the $6 rent reduction due to unresolved intercom and directory issues at our building. While $6 may not seem like a large sum, this appeal represents something more troubling. For myself and many of the fellow tenants, it reflects an ongoing pattern, a pattern of delay, neglect, and disregard for tenant well-being. It includes misrepresentation, a sample of which we just heard, and we continue to experience these issues in numerous areas of basic building maintenance and services. The landlord has had nearly a year since the original May 2024 ruling to address what are frankly very simple and straightforward corrections to the intercom system and its associated directories. Yet as of today, problems remain. The building's posted tenant directory remains out of date. The intercom directory was only updated just days ago. And even now, it is unclear whether all current residents are properly listed and connected. We know, for example, that at least 2 former tenants' numbers are still linked to the intercom system, which raises serious concerns about security. As a point of clarification, there are 2 directories. There's one on the intercom system itself outside the building. This is one that was updated just days ago, And there is one inside the building at the mailbox, which was also ordered to be updated. That has not been updated in many, many months. New tenants have moved in, and none of them are listed there, to my knowledge. This delay does not appear to stem from technical complexity. It is, I believe, symptomatic of a broader approach to management that places tenant needs at the bottom of the priority list. In recent months, many of us have experienced inadequate common area maintenance and opaque and erratic communication from management, and even attempts to improperly pass on costs for landlord responsibilities. It is difficult not to view this pattern as a calculated strategy to frustrate long-term tenants and pressure them to leave rent-stabilized units. While Mr. Galicia, on behalf of Starkwood and the property owner, attempts to portray efforts in a more charitable light and distorts the facts, the on-the-ground reality for tenants has consistently contradicted such claims. Tenants have made repeated requests in writing for intercom and directory updates. Those requests were ignored for months.
Time has expired, so we will need to wrap up. Thank you.
The delay speaks volumes. In light of this, I urge the Commission not only to deny this appeal in full, but also to consider issuing a formal referral.
I need to keep it at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
We will now move on to Diana. Just your name, city of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Diana Caspi. I am at 8558 Holloway Drive. That was my husband. The way I see the issue is with the intercom system is that most everybody has the new number to just access instead of the UPS or the mailman to just enter the building. I live on the first floor and I can hear these numbers just dialed in and people coming into the building. We have a new tenant that lives next to me. He's disabled, he's on a wheelchair. And he gets food delivered to him at least 3 times a day because he's not connected to the intercom until last week. He has been giving this number to people 3 times a day, different people bringing food in, different people bringing his packages in. So this intercom system has become a safety issue more than anything else as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. And it needs to be considered. And they haven't done anything in the 1.5 years that they needed to do. They only seem to be able to appeal when it's about time to appeal. The date seems to be close, but they haven't done anything. This is like such a waste of time, your time, my time, meaningless. We don't understand what they're trying to do. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. The landlord, Mr. Galicio, you'll now have 2 minutes and 54 seconds for rebuttal, if you choose.
Thank you. Do I need to introduce myself again? No, right? So what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding is that they don't understand that if we decide to stay the way that it is, which is with their $6, we will not even have to look and take in consideration that the intercom is working. I don't know if they understand that, but again, the only reason why we're here is because the intercom is working. If I wanted not to care about the intercom, I would not even appeal this decision and leave them with their $6, because then that means that the intercom can be just broken and they will not be able to do anything about it, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, there's a reason why they're getting a reduction in services already, because the intercom, according to them, is not up to function. So if that stays, the intercom is gonna be that, not functionable. So if that's what we're gonna be ended up doing, I'm willing to do so, because I'm not, yeah, they're right. I'm not here to be wasting their time or wasting my time or wasting my on-site manager's time. We're just tired that every time that we try to say that we're doing something for them. They look up a way to say that is not right, that is not true, that it doesn't punch the way that they want it to punch. They were talking about security issues. The new residents that are moving in are choosing not to put themselves on the intercom. It's not a rule. They don't have to be on the intercom. According to them, yes, they have to be on the intercom. That's a privacy act. People decide if they want to be in the intercom or names showing on the directory. They think that it has to be like that, but we told them many times already that that's not going to happen. But again, that's what is going on. I'm sorry. I'm a little passionate about it. Appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you. Before you step down, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions for you. Seeing none? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. You believe that you have complied with the hearing examiner's demand that it be fixed. You don't think, you believe that it's been addressed and that there should not be a $6 reduction any longer?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
That's it.
So I'll close the public hearing portion of this meeting at this time and see if my colleagues have questions. If not, let's move into deliberation.
I'm just curious, so what was the city inspection about if it wasn't requested by the tenant or the landlord or the city? I'm understanding there was an inspection by the city, but 10 days after the hearing examiner is out there? Or is that just hearsay? Is that just what they're saying?
The landlord requested an inspection by the city on this issue, and it was inspected, but that took place after the hearing examiner issued his decision. So
instead of asking for a determination compliance, they just asked for a inspection.
It seems that way, yeah. Well, from the testimony tonight, it sounds like they may have requested it previous to the hearing examiners. I don't know the exact timing of when they asked for it, but they might have asked for it early and it came late. But yes, that there is the compliance determination option out there, which I know in the staff
when
report.
the city received that
Request.
review, no, I'm talking about now that it's done, we've accepted the request, we've sent somebody out, they've made their determination or made their observation, brought that back. What is the city doing with that information? Are we processing it, or what are we?
I don't believe that went as a compliance determination request. So that's not how it was explained in the appeal. I think it was a code enforcement person. It was not an RSD person, correct, Cameron? So it was code enforcement from the landlord's nod of approval. So it didn't come into RSD for a compliance determination. It was not submitted. So it was included as part of this appeal, and that's all it was included as.
Okay. Is there a code violation in question here?
No,
Not that we're
not
aware
from my
of.
knowledge. I don't know the exact process of why code enforcement came out, but.
Thank you.
Commissioner Copeland?
Yes, just to clarify, when that code inspection was done, the determination was that it was not at that time in proper working order, and that was submitted during the hearing? Is that how the timeline went? But there's not been an actual determination.
I can look closer at the record, but.
There's not been a code compliance determination that's been
Correct.
done where it's, okay, it's correctly working now, we don't have that.
Compliance determination request and a hearing examiner looking at this issue has not taken place.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? I'll tell you, this is, for me, I try to go last. I'm going first on 2 of them in a row, but here I go. So for me, this really comes down to really bad timing on the part of the landlord, in that we have to, like I explained in the last hearing, we have to look at what was before the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner had evidence that made them determine that this had not been complied with. Subsequently, evidence we cannot consider because it was not before the hearing examiner is evidence that a city inspector went out and an invoice that the work had happened. Honestly, the way this looks like to me is that the landlord, rather than appealing this decision which we can only consider what was before the hearing examiner. Had they instead just went and applied for another compliance determination that same day, this would probably be resolved. My guess is, I don't know how the hearing examiner would decide it, but with all that evidence, it would seem to me that that would probably be the direction the hearing examiner would go, or they'd be more likely to go that way than they did before. So purely on a technicality, I would agree with staff that we need to uphold the hearing examiner's decision, but nothing in that decision would preclude the landlord from applying tomorrow morning for a compliance determination with that additional evidence that we can't consider tonight. That's where I'm at.
I agree with Chair Bass. I think, you know, the evidence that the hearing examiner had was still that it was not completely operational or properly operationally based that decision on the information that he had. And so a subsequent code compliance determination certainly could be applied for. And then if it's found to have been satisfied, then that's a different story. But I don't think the hearing examiner erred with the information that was in the record at the time. So I agree with staff's recommendation on this. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Goldman. Our buttons on the microphones are a little bit finicky sometimes.
Doesn't always hit when I hit it. Yeah, so I agree with my colleagues as well that given the information that the hearing examiner had, you know, that's a reasonable determination, and I think it makes sense to uphold and go with staff's recommendation here.
I agree with my colleagues, and we'll have some comments later about just the process in general, because I think that there should have been information to provide to the landlord to have expedited this process a little bit. Tonight was not necessary, I don't think, and I think the landlord would agree that tonight was not necessary if they had understood the process. But I agree with the hearing examiner, based upon the evidence that was provided at the time, did not make an error in their decision.
Do we have a motion? Or do you want, I'll make it.
I will move. Okay.
Rather than passing it down the resolution number 25679, a resolution of the Rent Stabilization Commission of the City of West Hollywood affirming the hearing examiner's compliance determination as to application number D4876CD1. That's my motion.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Copeland,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirby's,
Aye.
Chair Bass.
Aye. That motion carries. If the parties have any further questions, you can reach out to the Rent Stabilization Division at 323-848-6450, by email at rsd@weho.org, or you may request an in-person appointment online at weho.org under the services menu. We'll now move to our final appeal of the
Chair, may I jump in real briefly on the last one, real quick?
Yeah, of course.
For Commissioner Kirby's question, staff does identify areas where we think compliance determination might work better. In this case, the landlord was provided that option by email and chose to continue with the appeal despite that information being provided.
Thank you. And it is everyone's right to appeal. Of course, we just want to get these things resolved. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I think the commission would probably agree. We just like to get everything resolved and people working together, which is why we recommended a different approach. So our last appeal this evening is slightly complicated in that both parties have appealed. This is for appeal number D4980 at 1038 North Crescent Heights Boulevard. And my understanding of the way this process will work is we will listen to the tenant's appeal with 5 minutes on either side, and then we will go to the landlord's appeal with 5 minutes on either side. So we'll go through the process twice on this one. Is that correct with staff? I'm seeing head shaking yes, so.
Correct.
Okay, yes. So we will start first of all with our staff report, and then we'll proceed to comment from the public.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, Kellen Martz, Legal Counsel of the Rent Stabilization Commission. So For the record, I just want to put a little information on the record so it's out in the public. The landlord's appeal was lost in the computer system of the city. It got quarantined as potential spam and didn't show up. So the staff report was originally written just on the tenant's appeal. And then once that went out to the public and to the commission, the landlord reached out and said that he had also filed an appeal. IT was able to find it in the quarantine system, and we reviewed it, and we wrote a supplemental to the staff report, which was posted on the city's website under this agenda. It was sent out to the parties, and it was sent to the commission. So everyone has had an opportunity to review that. The way it will work for my presentation of the staff report is I'm going to present the staff report that was the original one. I'll follow up with the supplemental, which is just a short one-page follow-up. Going through the first appeal, you'll only be looking at the tenant's appeal, which does not include that supplemental. Once we turn to the landlord's appeal, which is one issue, focused on the supplemental report. If you want me to read it again, I can. Otherwise, you can proceed right into that appeal. All right, that was a lot. So again, this is D-4980, 1038 North Crescent Heights Boulevard. The appeal before you tonight for the first portion was filed by the tenant. This stems from a reduction in housing services case before a hearing examiner, and there were 5 issues. Some were common area and some were unit specific. This appeal concerns 3 of those issues. Issues with security deposit interest, reimbursement for gas company service repairs, and a door repair. The hearing examiner found that the tenant was not entitled to a rent decrease for those issues. The tenant has appealed, claiming that those issues are clearly in error. So the application was filed in October of 2024. The application was deemed D-4980. The 5 issues were the repair reimbursement for gas utility issues, the landlord's refusal to handle garbage and recycling duties, repair requests for a unit back door, interest on security deposit for 2 years, and then a general concern for a lack of required maintenance. The hearing took place in December of 2024. Both parties appeared or had representatives appear on their behalf. The gas repair issue, tenant testified that he had to pay for emergency gas repairs after a gas leak issue. The gas company had to come out and make those repairs, and he paid for the cost of that repair. He asked for reimbursement from the landlord, and that was denied. Landlord said that he was not involved in that issue, that it was a direct discussion between the tenant and the gas company, and that those repairs were not submitted through the required service portal. For the unit back door, the tenant testified that he had ongoing issues regarding repairs and maintenance and issues with direct communication with the landlord, including about the unit back door. He stated that there was a break-in, requested repairs to his back door, but disagreed with the resolution proposed by the landlord, believing it would not improve safety. The landlord said he wasn't actually aware of door issues until this application was filed. He noted that the tenant had not submitted a service request, but had rejected proposed repairs. The repairs appear to have included a metal plate added for security and door deterioration issues. And then lastly, before you is the security deposit issue. Tenant testified that he had not received the 2023 interest on his security deposit, which he believes the landlord is responsible for after the prior landlord owner failed to make the payment. He noted that unlike another tenant, he did not have an estoppel statement for his unit. The landlord testified that the interest payment was due before he bought the property and was not listed on any escrow documents, and that that obligation fell to the previous landlord, not to himself. A decision was issued in January of 2025 denying the tenant's request for the issues related to the gas repair cost, the unit door, and the interest on security deposits. There was a rent decrease issued for the garbage can issue, which is for the subsequent appeal tonight. The maintenance issue was not addressed because it was a broad generality. Tenant has filed the appeal claiming that the decision is in error. Tenant asserts that the decision didn't address some of the issues that he raised, including the unpaid interest on the security deposit. Tenant also reiterates that he believes the landlord is responsible for the gas company repair. And then for the door repair issue, tenant states that he did not actually reject the proposed repairs, but reiterates that the solution he has objections to. It would not provide added security for his unit. The questions before you tonight are, is there substantial evidence in the record reasonably supporting the hearing examiner's determination regarding the gas repair costs, the unit door, and the interest on the security deposit? Staff believes that the hearing examiner did not err and that there is substantial evidence in the record to support the decision. For the gas repair costs, this is, again, a housing service that began before 1999, which limits housing services to those connected with the use or occupancy of the unit. While utilities such as gas are included, the Commission does not have the jurisdiction to resolve civil disputes such as this one over who is responsible for reimbursement. And so this would fall outside of the Commission's authority. We're not taking a position on who is right or wrong, but this is not the appropriate venue for who needs to make that reimbursement. As to the unit door, staff believes the record does demonstrate that the tenant's refusal to allow this type of repair falls under Rent Stabilization Section 1756010E, which allows a hearing examiner to deny a rent reduction if the landlord's failure to perform is excused by the intentional act of the tenant. And then on the interest on the security deposit, staff also finds that this is outside of the Commission's purview. The one thing that staff would note is that in landlord-tenant law and property law, generally the new property owner is not excused from the past actions of the prior ownership. However, that issue is not before the Commission tonight. So in conclusion, staff finds that the decision is reasonably supported by the record and recommends affirming that decision. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have questions of legal counsel at this time? Seeing none, we will turn to Mr. Markey, the tenant. And because we have two appeals tonight, I'm going to ask that these comments right now stick to the three things that you appealed, which were the gas utility repair, the unit back door, and the security deposit. You'll have an opportunity to address the other issue later. But introduce yourself by name, city of residence, and how you would like to divide your time.
Yes, David Markey. I am a long-time West Hollywood resident. I've been in my unit now for 33 years. And in the past 5 years, the building...
Could you please tell us how you'd like to divide your time? How would you like to divide your time?
I would just like to go for one run.
Thank you.
You know, and I have a bunch of notes here, but I was just so overwhelmed by what I just heard. And so much of what the landlord has claimed about what, like, I did not refuse any work done to my door, for example. And also, this was not a gas leak. What happened was the previous owner, the building was sold twice in 5 years, so it was kind of a whirlwind of transition. And the previous owner had put an earthquake valve on the gas meters. And it's either a faulty one or one that's really sensitive because it has gone off twice. And when that happens, it disrupts my gas line, and I have no gas in my unit. And Michael had provided a third-party maintenance app company called Hemlane, and I had called them and told them about the problem. They did not call me back. So it was on me to call the gas company to have them come out and restore my gas and light my pilots on my water heater, and I have an old floor furnace. It's incredibly difficult to relight the pilot on. So anyways, I had to do that, and I was stuck with the bill. So I didn't feel that was fair. The other issue with the door, the attempted break-in, the landlord claims he didn't know about it. I have on my phone texts to him that show otherwise, that the minute the break-in happened, I texted him right away about it, and he knew about it. And a year or so passed until I filed the first hearing did he finally come and have someone put a thin metal plate that's locked with 4 screws that could very easily be removed by a screwdriver. So I didn't consider this to be any real level of security. So that was my dispute with it. It didn't really solve the problem. So really, that's pretty much it. What was the third issue? I'm sorry, I'm like really overwhelmed by the technicalities of this whole thing.
Yeah, the security deposit.
The security deposit, I believe, actually after the hearing, Michael did make the payment on 1, if not 2 of them. So that has been taken care of. And as far as like him paying for the previous owner who didn't make the payment, you know, I'm baffled there too, because, you know, at any rate, I'll just close out now because
Okay.
I had more notes, but I really don't want to get into it. It just seems like there's a lot of convolutedness here. If I would much prefer any questions, if anyone had, I could answer them directly. Thank you.
If you'll stay right there, I'll ask our secretary how much time you have left.
1 minute and 52 seconds.
Okay, and then do my colleagues have questions of the tenant at this time? Mr. Markey?
So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about the door, because that seems to be, based upon the staff's report, what our real discussion is going to be about tonight.
Sure.
So tell me why you believe the evidence that the hearing examiner reviewed, why that should have, or what is it that you're appealing about the door? The amount?
It was just more having to do with the landlord claiming he didn't know anything about it, and when in fact he did, and then his resolution coming about a year later with, you know, putting the little thin metal plate on it as his resolution. And what he wrote in his appeal was in my point of view, completely inaccurate and not true. I did not refuse service
So
to
one minute
the
here.
door.
So let's just talk about, so what is it that you disagree with about the hearing examiner's decision about your door handle or your door fix?
I'm not sure if I understand. That was just another one of the issues that I had.
Okay.
On the table.
Yeah, I can't let you
didn't
continue.
necessarily disagree with
I
the
understand.
hearing
I understand. I don't want to interrupt you, but I can't let you just talk about whatever you want. So if you can't answer my question, that's fine. I'm not sure if I'm even asking it correctly. So we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Copeland?
Hi. You mentioned that normally requests for repairs are made through a service portal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is there also an emergency number provided
There was no
to tenants to
emergency number,
use?
and Michael had made it very difficult to communicate directly with him, and he had us pay the rent through another app that we had to go on. So basically, Michael's not really around on the property, and he's managing the building through these apps. And
So you have, my question was actually, do you have, if there's a repair request, you go through this app, but is there, in addition to that, an emergency number for?
I have no emergency number for anything like that.
Okay.
I mean,
With regard to the door, you're saying that you did not refuse that they couldn't, that you didn't say they couldn't repair the door because you didn't agree with the way it was going to be done?
Right. That was the thing, where it was just more about what he had written in response to my, notes that, he said I refused service on the door, which didn't happen. And he said he wasn't aware of it. And I have proof otherwise that he was aware of the attempted break-in.
Okay.
And I mean, that's really what it was about. So sorry for...
Thank you. That's good. You answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. My question is, you accepted the installation on the door of the metal plates, even though you found it insufficient?
It was done without,
Okay.
I mean, someone just came and did it. And
Okay.
It was there, and it's still there. But really, if that's security, anyone could just undo it with a twist of 4 screws.
Okay, I've heard you on that. Then the next question is, why did you pay for the gas repairs without waiting for the landlord to approve that?
Because of I would have been without gas service. I would have been unable to bathe and cook food and eat. And, you know, I need gas in my unit to heat my apartment. It would have been a period of waiting before any of that would have happened.
Okay.
I had no choice but to accept the bill from the gas company.
Okay, and you submitted a ticket or whatever through this third-party app prior to having the gas
I
company
had
come out?
called Hemlane, told them that I had no gas and I needed it addressed, and no one at Hemlane returned my call
For how long?
for the whole day.
Okay,
Like a whole day passed, and I was just, needing to get gas back in my apartment. So,
thank you.
yeah.
Any additional questions? You'll have 1:52 for rebuttal, should you choose to take it. We will now turn to the landlord. I believe it's Mr. Sharsad. Please correct me if that's not on the pronunciation, but you are with us on Zoom. Please introduce yourself by name, city of residence, and you'll have 5 minutes. Again, just stick to the 3 issues of the tenant's appeal.
Yes, thank you. And just a quick point of clarification, because the security deposit issue, is that no longer an issue, or is that still something requested to be addressed?
It is before us, but we heard from the tenant that it has been resolved, so,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah, Michael Sarshad, West Hollywood. I don't know if I'm allowed to split it into 2, or is that all just one?
You are not as the respondent on this appeal. When I call on you the next time, you will have that opportunity. It'll be in reverse.
Okay, great. Thank you, and appreciate everyone's time tonight, and thank you for staying late. I know it is quite late for everyone, so I appreciate that. I will address the couple of issues before us, and I'll start with one. There's a third-party property manager that is involved. It's called Hemlane. They have a phone number. All tenants have access to it. And I would like to state that there actually is an emergency line. So it's 24-hour access, and that all tenants can call it at any point, and there is an emergency staff available to them. So that's a bit inaccurate. And the other thing is, I will say, tenant also has my cell phone number. So I'm not really certain why the tenant is claiming that they cannot access me, but they were introduced and given my cell phone number at the very beginning. So they do have my cell phone number for any issues. With regards to these couple of issues, so I'll start with the utilities. So first off, again, I'm not involved in any of the utilities. The landlord and tenant, there's no involvement. A landlord does not involve or does not provide any utility services. Even in the tenant's lease agreement, it says that tenant is responsible for all utilities, all at tenant's expense. So not under landlord's name. Not really sure, what the bill is between landlord and tenant when it comes to the gas. I was not aware of there being an issue. Again, tenant claims that they called Hemlane. Hemlane didn't call back. If they called Hemlane, Hemlane always logs an issue. So that's always something that gets logged. But regardless, this issue did not come to me until post event. So the tenant resolved the issue between them and the gas company, and then he just come to me afterwards requesting reimbursement. I was not really sure what happened, nor given any opportunity to intervene, nor is the bill under my name or purview to intervene from that perspective. So I'm not really sure what happened. None of the other tenants have had issues with their gas meters since I've been under ownership. So again, uncertain of what was going on there. With regards to the unit door, a couple points of clarification. Tenant did notify me that there was an attempted break-in, so I acknowledge I was notified of the issue. But I will say that, at that point, yes, we're looking for solutions to make sure that, there was tamper resistance installed in the door. Tenant was unhappy with the proposed solution and rejected it. And then it wasn't until this past hearing that he filed for a rent reduction, which is when I was made aware that, he was unhappy with the resolution, but he was continuing looking for another solution. So again, I was more than happy to install an anti-theft, a theft deterrent issue, which is a metal plate on the lock to prevent, because someone was trying to break through the lock. So we just installed a metal plate, which was a theft deterrent plate. Tenant was there, and it was installed, with him being there, with our maintenance staff as well. So from what I can tell, I mean, even though he denied it, we came back, he allowed it the second time, and it has been installed. It is a theft, a tamper resistant mechanism to support that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any of my colleagues have questions of the landlord? We do not have any questions for you, so we're going to put you back on mute, and then we will turn back to Mr. Markey. You have 1 minute and 52 seconds for rebuttal, should you choose to take it.
The issue with the gas line, I don't own the building. I don't own, if someone has installed a faulty device on the gas meter, that's not my problem. I mean, if this thing is if this thing is really extra sensitive or malfunctioning and it's cutting my gas off, why should I be, on the hook for that, for paying I mean, like, it's happened twice. If it happens again, it's just like, a certain point, how is that my responsibility? I don't own the property. I don't own the gas line. I did not install these earthquake valves that, it's true, it's only so far affecting me, but I think because my meter is the last one on the row, and if someone's coming with a delivery in a bag and hits it, maybe that's why it's only triggering my unit. But I just don't want it to keep happening and me having to pay $80+ every time to get my gas up and running again. And as far as the common area issue of the garbage and the recycling goes, which was found, in the initial hearing, which Michael has appealed.
We will get to that item in a moment.
Okay.
Not now.
I'd just like to say that, for 27 years, I had the garbage and recycling taken care of.
You will have
in my
5 minutes
building.
to address that in a moment.
Okay.
But if you want to keep talking about
No.
Okay. Do we have any questions of the tenant at this time regarding the gas utility repair, the back unit door repair, and the security deposit? Okay, seeing none, we will now move to the next section of this appeal, which is the landlord's appeal. And so, Mr. Sharjad, you will have 5 minutes, which is divisible, to discuss the garbage and recycling items. And you've already introduced yourself and we're on the same agenda item, so you don't need to do that again.
Great, thank you. And I will split it up. I'll start off with a statement, and I can do any rebuttal that may be needed. So quite simply, the only reason I appealed this was I believe there was an error in recording of the initial statement, which was by the hearing examiner, which was that this was a housing service that was provided when I took over, and that I changed it and removed it when I took over. So I'm appealing because that was not the case. This was not a housing service or service from the person I purchased the property from, and I did not make any changes to it thereafter. So I think there might have been confusion. So that's the only reason that I appealed. So again, when I took over the property, it was not a housing service that was provided. All tenants, since I've had the property under my ownership, have taken the trash out to the curb and brought it back once a week. To clarify, the landlord and owner pays for it, but the only thing that we're talking about is literally just moving the trash can from the property to the curb and back after trash day. So that was not a housing service that was provided. All tenants have been doing that once a week since I've had the property. And again, they've had it since the previous owner. They've been doing that as well. So no modifications, They're again reiterating that even the lease states that all utilities are at tenant's expense, but again, all tenants have been doing that. It's in their lease. They know that they're responsible for it, and I have not made any changes. And really, when taking the property over, my entire goal was to minimize changes and disruption as much as possible. And I made that clear to all the tenants. I understand that under new ownership, it's frustrating. There are going to be some changes, of course. Tenants, people don't like change in general. I understand that. I am sympathetic to that. And so my goal was, hey, we don't want to make any changes here. So we're going to keep these services as is. And that's what I was appealing. Is that, look, this was not a service that was provided during my 2 years, nor the previous owner's 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, how much time does he have left?
2 minutes and 33 seconds.
So you have 2 minutes and 33 seconds should you choose to use it. Do any of my colleagues have questions of the landlord on the issue of trash? I have one, and that question is, you say that this service did not exist under the previous ownership. Where is the proof of that the hearing examiner had to review?
I believe that if you go back to the hearing record, the tenant themselves can verify that the previous owner also did not provide that service.
This current tenant, that's Mr.
Correct.
Markey. Okay, thank you.
Correct. And there was another tenant there at the time that also reaffirmed. So.
Okay, thank you. So you will have 2 minutes and 33 seconds, but we'll now turn to Mr. Markey to respond just specifically on the issue of the trash, and you'll have 5 minutes that you cannot divide.
As far as garbage and recycling goes, I consider that a managerial concern of a building. It's not on the tenants to do this work. We have 2 large blue recycling bins, 3 large black garbage cans, and 2 green waste bins.
Please talk into the microphone.
Oh, and 2 large green waste bins, 2 large blue recyclable bins, and 3 large black garbage cans. Not everybody on the property is doing this. Oftentimes it falls solely on me to haul all of these cans out. And it's not just a few, and they're as big as this podium, And, to me, someone that has lived there for, 33 years and had the garbage and the recycling taken care of by the original management of the building, it was something that I considered a removal of a housing service. Yes, it's true. The previous owner who bought the building and remodeled it and flipped it and sold it to this owner, he had no responsibilities either as far as that went. He was just like, it's on you. So while the new owner did get this property from him and he was not taking care of that, I consider it still, because he shirked his responsibility, the previous owner, on taking care of the simple fact of getting the waste to the curb every Thursday morning. Just because he shirked it, it doesn't mean that it's law or it's legal. I consider this a managerial concern and not something that falls on the tenant. And if all the tenants were actually in coordination and everyone was pulling their weight, it would be a different issue. But it often falls on me or maybe just one other person to do all this work, and I just don't think it's fair. I'll close with that.
Thank you. Any questions for the tenant on the trash issue? Mr. Kirpies?
So what approximate year did you start having to do this?
When the building was first sold in 2020.
So the 25 years you lived there before, you didn't have to deal with it?
Correct. And that was taken care of by the building management. Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, we thank you for your time, and we will now turn to Mr. Sharshed to rebut.
Thank you. Yeah, listen, I've spoken with other tenants as well, and they've all stated that yes, they do. It's a shared responsibility. They all take part in it. And yes, they say yeah, maybe one time they were out of town or something like that, and they didn't get to the trash. But outside of that, no one has had an issue with this. No, they have not complained about it, and it's something that they've moved forward with. And again, all I can speak to is what I know has been a service or not a service for my ownership and the previous ownership. I have no evidence or anything from previous, like 2 generations ago, ownership. So again, just want to reiterate, I have not made any changes, and there have not been made any changes, at least for the last 5 years.
Thank you. Any questions of the landlord on the Commissioner Kirby's?
So help me understand this. You're not required by the city as the owner of the building to make sure that sanitation services are provided to the building?
So this is the part I want to clarify. We are paying for the sanitation service. We pay for the trash can, we pay for the service of it as well. What we're talking about here, so that is covered by the landlord. What we're talking about here is simply taking it to the curb and bringing it back. That's it.
So what happens if none of the tenants do that?
It's in their lease that they are responsible to do that.
They are responsible to physically move the things out to the street. That's in their lease, or they're required to pay a bill for it.
No, it's not talking about the bill. I mean, in this instance, for this tenant in particular, it does say that the tenant is responsible for all utilities. But outside of that, it just says that trash removal is their responsibility.
But again, what happens if nobody does that? What happens to you as the property owner? If there's no physical workers out there to do this, what happens to you? You'd probably get fined by the city, right?
To be honest, I have not encountered the issue in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions, so I will close. Well, first of all, I should have asked for public comment. Seeing no one else in the room, I didn't think there was anyone. I know that's out of order, but make sure I get it in the record that I've asked for public comment. There is none, so I will close the public hearing on this item. We'll put you on mute in Zoom, but you can participate by listening to our deliberation at this point in time, and we thank you both for your time going through that complicated appeal, since both parties appealed. Who would like to begin?
Chair, may I begin with just a
Of course, you can always have the floor when you
Perfect.
You keep us in line.
I had 2 comments. You took care of the public comment one, so there's 1 left. I will just note for the record, it's partially germane to what you're looking at tonight, but a property owner is required to maintain gas facilities at a property, so it's outside of what you're looking at tonight because you don't have the authority to order a reimbursement. But I just want to put on the record that even if a utility is under the requirements of a lease to the tenant for them to pay the gas company and whatnot, maintaining the gas facilities is required under state law. And it has to be maintained, provided as it was when they first moved in. And then it also has to be maintained in good working order. That is separate and was not what was presented before the hearing examiner or the commission tonight. It was just simply a request for reimbursement. That does not mean that tenants cannot apply for a rent reduction for gas problems. We're not prejudging that yay or nay, but reimbursement is not an authority that the commission has. And that is all the legal notes for you.
On that, there is a legal remedy for that, but this is not that avenue. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioner Copeland, I see you pushing your button.
No, that's basically the same thing that I was going to ask. I mean, if a utility line or set up, or whether it's electricity, gas, or whatever, is ultimately the responsibility of the owner of the property to keep that maintained. However, whether that's a faulty earthquake valve or whatever that would be that's not something that we could solve if that's the gas company's responsibility, or as far as reimbursement, we can't we can't, that's beyond our jurisdiction to handle that.
That is correct.
That's correct. Okay. Thank you. Just want to make sure it was clear.
And then, Chair, I did tell a small lie to you. I do have one other comment for.
We'll forgive you and
Thank you.
please proceed.
So the resolution that was presented to you that is on the public website and was emailed to you is only based on the original staff report. So the trash service issue that you heard in the second part of this matter tonight, whatever you decide in terms of that will need to be updated onto the resolution. That's it.
Okay. That is a good note. So who would like to begin deliberations? Commissioner Kerpes, please.
Yeah, I think that, as staff pointed out, the two of the three issues in the first appeal by the land or by the tenant are not or are outside of our jurisdiction. I think that there are other remedies, both externally outside the city, and then maybe I'll ask this question: isn't one of the remedies for a interest? I guess that's no longer an issue tonight, but let's say it were. One of the remedies is the tenant just withholding that amount of money, I believe, by a certain, after February or March, whatever the date is.
That's correct. Within that same calendar year, they're permitted after February 1st.
Within the same calendar year. Okay.
So yeah, that was the issue here.
Complicates things.
We're
Okay.
looking at past years. It has to be taken within
Gotcha.
that year, but that is a remedy in the global sense.
Okay, thank you. And then so that brings me just to the one issue that is within our purview is the whether the hearing examiner erred on the door. I do not believe that the hearing examiner did err. I think that we just have a situation where the tenant is not happy with the outcome, but the landlords or the hearing examiner did not err in that aspect. In terms of the other appeal, I also believe that the hearing examiner made the correct decision. I think that we saw it twice tonight in two different situations where the landlord, I think, is a little bit overly separated himself from his responsibilities in terms of, as what the staff attorney just mentioned about the gas, his argument that we don't deal with that at all. It's not, we don't provide services, so we don't deal with the gas lines. That is not correct. And I think the same line of thinking is in terms of just in a general sense, kind of what I was pointing out to the landlord, like, so who is responsible for this? Is under your account. What happens if this physical activity does not happen? And it would come back to the name on the account, which is the landlord. The landlord is responsible for the building. But not to get too far off subject, I think that the hearing examiner, my point is the hearing examiner made the correct decision in that case as well, I believe, based upon the evidence.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldman, Commissioner Copeland.
I agree with Commissioner Kerpes. I don't think I need to repeat. But yeah, I think on both counts, the hearing examiner was correct.
Commissioner Copeland?
I agree with my colleagues on that. I think the responsibility, for the trash removal certainly is at some point was not the tenant's responsibility and should not have been shifted to them. Certainly something that I couldn't physically do myself or want to be responsible for. As far as the door, now I understand that in the record there was a refusal to fix the door, but I'm understanding now it has been repaired, and I'm assuming if the tenant, if it does turn out to be insufficient, that could certainly be addressed down the road. There's no, I don't think there's time barring on that, if it was needed to be addressed later. So I think that issue is correct as well. The security deposit's not relevant. And we discussed the gas as well. So I think I agree with my colleagues on those issues.
Thank you, and I don't want to belabor it because I think we'll be a unanimous vote on this, but I do want to just call out my thinking on each one of these, and that is when it comes to gas utility, that's the one I had the most sympathy for, but it's outside of our jurisdiction, in as much as we can issue a refund. We can issue a rent reduction, and so I would encourage the parties, as I did on an earlier hearing, to I've used the city's services. You can contact the Rent Stabilization Division, and I'm not exactly sure what that remedy is, but we have an incredible staff, and they would certainly be able to point folks in the right direction to get that resolved. I know I live in a building that was built in the 1927, I think, and I hate the old gas heater in my unit, and every time the gas company comes out, I'm like, please red tag it so I can get a new heater. They don't because they're being ethical, but ultimately, even though I pay the gas bill, the landlord, when that time comes, will be responsible for replacing that heater. And I've been in the same situation where it wasn't working and it was cold. And luckily, I had a really good, and I'm not implying that that's not the case here, but in my case, I had a really good property manager who said, I can't get somebody out today, but go buy a space heater. I'll reimburse you for that, and I will take care of the repairs. So that was my experience. And ultimately, I think that there's a resolution there. Repair of the unit back door, there have been a lot of repairs in my unit that I just don't think are the way I would want them done, but if they're done, it's a substantial compliance situation, and it sounds like the landlord met their need there. Security deposit, again, has to be done within the same 2 years. And it's when it comes to the trash, I think the hearing examiner, again, we decide based on the evidence, did they make a decision that a reasonable person, and they have a landlord saying that that wasn't a service and a tenant saying that it was, a reasonable person could have come down on either side of that issue. I think the hearing examiner did not err. And I also believe that it is ultimately, whether the other tenants are happy to do it or not, it is ultimately the landlord's responsibility to make sure it gets done, however they get that done, but making sure it actually does get done. And that's an issue for a compliance determination if they've met the hearing examiner's direction on what needs to be done. And if they're doing that with other tenants, that's something that they can apply for a compliance determination on as to whether that's being met or not. So those are the 4 issues before us, which puts me exactly where my colleagues are, and that we support staff's recommendation. And I believe our legal counsel is currently writing a resolution to that effect. I know the look on your face.
You are correct.
Okay, so we will take just a moment to let him finish his work.
It'll be about 2 minutes and I'll be with you.
Okay. But so that everyone understands, we will just be affirming the hearing examiner's decision on both appeals, is ultimately where we'll land. I mean, we'll all vote, but I think that's what I heard my colleagues say.
Yes, and just for the record, you're looking for a revised resolution to be read into the record so that you know what you are potentially voting on.
Yes, which I think that's the direction, is to affirm on all points in both appeals.
Chair, as he works on that, I think on behalf of all of us, at least on behalf of myself, for sure, I do appreciate, in a complicated case like this, the cordial demeanor the two of you have had towards each other throughout this process, and I hope that continues and that it can be used. That relationship can come to a mediation or other things if there are differences that can be worked out.
All right, I am ready to go. All right, so there was a draft resolution put into the record. The revisions, because we are adding in the landlord's appeal and the garbage issue. The first edit to the draft is section 1, number 10, which originally stated on February 4, 2025, the tenant timely filed an appeal of the hearing examiner's decision. Added to that is on February 5, 2025, the landlord timely filed an appeal of the hearing examiner's decision. The commission finds that the landlord's appeal was timely filed despite being temporarily lost in the City of West Hollywood's email quarantine system. And then in section 4, I'm going to read Some of this was already there, but some of it is edited. The maintenance complaint was not addressed in the decision as it was a broad generality and not a specific quantifiable concern. This item was not appealed and is therefore final and not before the commission. The tenant's appeal before the commission is as to the issues of the gas repair reimbursement, the unit door repair, and the interest on the security deposit. The landlord's appeal before the commission is for the garbage and recycling issue. The decision resulted in a $23 rent reduction. And then at the very bottom of section 4, as to the garbage and trash issue, there is substantial evidence in the record to support the decision's findings. And then the final sentence, which was already there, but I'll reiterate, the commission finds that the hearing examiner's decision is supported by substantial evidence in the record and is not in error. And that concludes my edits.
Is there a motion to approve that resolution, which I have numbered as 25680?
So moved.
So moved.
Yeah. I thought you were going to do it. So moved.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Kirby's and a second by Commissioner Copeland?
There we go.
Okay.
Sure.
Then would ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Copeland?
Aye.
Commissioner Copeland?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirby?
Aye.
Chair Guys?
Aye. That motion carries. And if the parties have any further questions, you can reach the Rent Stabilization Division at 323-848-6450, by email at rsd@weho.org, or you may request an in-person appointment online at weho.org under the services menu. For the parties who joined us through Zoom, you will now be placed back in the waiting room. If you would like to watch the rest of the meeting, you may find your options to do so at weho.org/WehoTV. We thank you for your time. Item number 10 on our agenda, items from staff. Mr. Kessinger, do we have anything additional?
No additional items from staff at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to item number 11. Do we have any speakers from the public? Seeing none? No speakers. Thank you. And so we'll move to item number 12. Sorry for cutting you off, Mr. Secretary. Items number 12, items from commissioners. Please go ahead, Commissioner Goldman.
So I want to really thank staff for the zoning presentation, and I just also want to say for the record that I do think as we're considering housing, one of the things that really makes streets safe is having pedestrians out there and on them, and neighbors knowing each other and walking, biking, however that may be. And then also that we consider those that do have mobility challenges and make streets safe for them as well.
Great. Commissioner Kirby's?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff earlier that was here for that presentation, but also staff this evening for the analysis, especially in, I think it was the second case, maybe? Second case? I really appreciated both. No, it must have been the first case because you were sitting over here. I mean, not that you didn't do good in all of them, but I especially appreciate the analysis you provided both in the comments, or both in your report and in as kind of follow-up to the interaction with the parties of the case in that first case. And then finally, just a reminder that I will be gone next meeting, and also, just to follow up on my point earlier, I appreciate that the staff did respond to the landlord in this recent case this evening. And I think, I'll preface this by saying, I think that our staff does an amazing job in West Hollywood. I think in all levels, it just seems like we oftentimes have, and this is the struggle, I guess, maybe of government, but if we can just really focus on the, from the tenant, from the landlord, from the nervousness of filing an appeal, from their position and from their point of view, if we could just really try to go above and beyond to make sure that we're providing them with the options of the best path forward, their different options, make sure they understand the process, because it just seems like we do have a lot is a weird word. We do have cases that come in front of us that I feel like not everyone in the room understands what's going on. And so anything that we can do in advance, whether it's through public education, through print, through calls directly to them when they file these questionable applications, or when we hear that somebody goes out and inspects a property when we're not really sure why city staff members out there doing it. I mean, anything like that, if we can just kind of really try to answer those questions before it gets into a public forum where everyone has to come here and do this, that would be very much appreciated. But I do know that I'm sure you guys do try this, and so I thank you.
Commissioner Copeland?
I agree with everything you just said, of course, but I especially wanted to thank staff for being so responsive and helpful, and it's great to see Roger again as well, and for being so responsive and supportive, and it's been wonderful to come back and remember just how easy you make this, easier you make our job for us up here, and my fellow commissioners as well. I really appreciate the support and enjoy working with you. That's it for me.
Thank you. It's a love fest. We're all very grateful for the work this evening, and always I appreciate all of the hard work as we got through some essentially 4 appeals in one night, which is great. So thank you to everyone. When Commissioner Topchin said that he couldn't attend the meeting this evening, he forwarded me a message, so forgive me for reading some of this. I'm doing it on behalf of Commissioner Topchin. He cannot attend this evening because he is engaged in the preparations for the WehoMishka 2025 Festival. And it will take place next Sunday, May 18th at Plummer Park. And he asked me to let everyone know, my fellow commissioners, the city staff, everybody who may be watching, that there's free admission and parking, and there are flyers available at City Hall, here at City Council chambers. The festival begins at 11 a.m. and will feature a full day of entertainment, including live performances on the outdoor stage, fun activities for children in Kidstown, a variety of food vendors, an art exhibition in the community center, and business fair in the park. The celebration will culminate with the annual gala concert from 5 to 7, featuring international pop star Avram Russo and Grammy Award-winning Motown legend Thelma Houston. This is the 24th WehoMishka Festival, sponsored by the City of West Hollywood and its Russian-speaking advisory board. So on behalf of Commissioner Topchin, consider yourself all invited. And I went last year and it was quite a bit of fun, so I will second his enthusiasm for this event, and look forward to seeing him and Vice Chair Rory at our next meeting. Anything else this evening? Then with that, I will adjourn this meeting to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission, to be held on May 22nd in the West Hollywood Public Meeting Room, Council Chambers, which is this room. Good night.